Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram. And this is fucking talking shit with Eagle, episode 794. Hopefully, you guys have had a great day. Eagle Gardens. I sure have. What a rough start to this awesome evening. I'd like to welcome my guest, Elk. Oh, please. Could you relieve me?
Eclectic Elegance.
Oh man, thank you. Thank you, my friend. I knew I was gonna stumble on that for some reason.
You're
How
good. You're
are
good.
you doing this evening?
Doing well. Doing well. Got plant stuff done that I needed to do yesterday and just kind of enjoying my day off today. So yeah.
Right. Uh, well, of course, this is a cannabis smoking show, and I will be smoking some. What will you be possibly partaking on this evening?
So I got some of my Lime Breath Reserve lime skunk cut that I actually had a buddy find. He popped one seed out of one of my packs and found this incredible pheno that I've looked through hundreds of seeds and nothing. There's a lot of similarities around here and there, but nothing quite what he found. And so he ended up getting it back to me, and it's just been kind of my breeder cut that him and I have held. So I've been working with that, and I plan to work with that for quite a while. It's definitely something special. I just went to a small kind of little cup down in Denver last Wednesday, and everyone that smelled it was like, "Whoa, dude, that's something different. Like I have not, that's not something you typically smell." And it's not for everyone. My wife doesn't like when I smoke it because it reeks. And I mean it ranges from very like a lime zest to like a paint thinner. It's very acrid, kind of has like those musky grandma basement kind of terps to it a little bit, and it's really heavy in thiols. So like you'll leave it in a bag in like your center console and then like open up your car and it just like, dude, it stinks like a skunk. Like so it's definitely something that I created and I've just absolutely loved. So I've been smoking that and um, this other OG cross. I call it Dome Crusher OG. It's a Dog Walker to Star Killer OG. So those two have been my hot favorite lately.
Yeah. I love to hear somebody passionate about their work, but moreover passionate about what they're smoking on. So that's
Well,
pretty awesome.
I mean, that's what got me going into, like where I am today is just like, starting to smoke and then being like, wow, I can actually like play with this and like make things and see what I've made and enjoy it. So that curiosity is really what kicked it off at a younger age for me. So
Well, you walked right into it. That's right where I like to start this thing off, is right in the beginning. When and where did cannabis enter your life? When did this journey for the love of the plant start?
So it's funny because I've been thinking about that just because, we planned on doing this. And so the very first time I tried was seventh grade, and I had, got some from, I had snuck some from a family member, and me and a really good friend like tried rolling it up, and we were just stupid and, didn't actually get high or anything. And then it wasn't until like a year later in like eighth grade, I had some friends and we had smoked and I only took like two hits or so, and it was swag Mexican brickweed because first time was in California and then I was in eighth grade out in Arizona. um and so in Arizona we had plenty of Mexican brick, and so I taken 2 hits of that and kind of went home, and like I felt a little, kind of something there, but I wasn't sure if it was like placebo. And then I remember the first real like time that I was like, whoa. Uh, Me and like 5 of my high school buddies, his parents were out of town, so we all stayed the night at his house, and we made like a stupid makeshift bong out of like a Tropicana kind of bottle jug. Um, and we smoked out of that, and that was like I actually felt it, and it was almost a psychedelic experience. It was got the most insane munchies. It was crazy. It was crazy. And I was like, wow, like it's incredible. Something has this like power over the human brain, and and so I was hooked after that. I was like, wow, I like this. So ever since then, it's just been like getting into, I was first delving into, like brickweed. And then when I got like some good stuff, I got sour diesel. And that was, talk about a psychedelic effect. I mean, I've, tried mushrooms and things here and there. And that was, almost to that level. It was incredible. But that was also very early in my smoking career, so I didn't really have a tolerance, so it was incredible.
Yeah.
So
I only ask this when people say that they don't necessarily or they didn't get high the first time. So what kind of what's a little bit like say the backstory? Uh was it around like the home front, or was cannabis something you picked out kind of outside the home, I guess is the question.
honestly, it was in the home front. I mean, it's not like growing was passed down necessarily from generation to generation, but my dad grew weed, and he went to prison for weed, and his dad was a Vietnam vet, and when he got back, he grew his own weed. So technically I'm a third generation, Southern California grower, but I wasn't necessarily like passed down the knowledge. It just like in high school when I started to really get a knack for it, my I was on a summer vacation with my dad because I had like separate custody between my mom and my dad. So I would see my dad in the summers. And so it was like my sophomore year. We were down in San Diego at Ocean Beach. There's a really cool store down there called The Black. It's a very kind of, you know, it's a smoke shop, and it's kind of like a Spencer's, and it's got really unique oddity type things in there. And I saw the George Cervantes, medical grow Bible, and I was just like thumbing through it, and I was like, "Whoa, I want to buy it! I want this." And I was too young at the time, so I kept being like, "Dad, come on, Dad, come on!" And finally, he got it for me, and then I read that book, front to back like 5, 6 times, and I was just obsessed. And after, doing that, I was getting into like looking into online forums on, like Roll It Up and IC Canographic. Just I think Overgrow kind of got shut down before I kind of got in, to everything. But I was just on forums for like, I don't know, a good year and a half, just reading of everyone's different style of growing and what is kind of working better for certain people. And so that's when I kind of just took, I don't know, I was trying to make money here and there doing just random jobs and stuff, so I just kind of built a little closet grow, and popped some Mexican bag seed that I had come across, just from getting some swag, because it was here and there, you get kind of some decent stuff. You're like, okay, and there would be, only 5, 10 seeds in there compared to other ones. It's like, man, like half this bag is like seed. So the better ones I would keep, here and there, and I'd kind of label them. And I've just kind of periodically gone through those here and there, but those are what I kind of first went through and found some what I would consider nowadays like a real Afghani kind of hash plant. It was very, very cushy and sweet, like hashy. I don't know, terpene profile to it from what I remember growing. And it was just I had quite a few that were like that. And I had read about the males and to cut the males, but I was in Arizona at the time, and I really didn't know how to cure. So it's not like the weed was that flavorful or anything. I didn't quite know how to I didn't have enough to have it in a small tent and like cure it out properly. I just had like a couple plants to hang up and just try to do what I could, but it wasn't like anything like I can produce now. So yeah, just kind of started out in a closet, um little kind of, I don't know, 2 by 3.5, 4 feet by, I don't know, 3 feet wide, probably, your typical kind of small grow tent. But I used, and it was like a small refrigerator, for kind of like apartments and stuff like that. It was like a small shipping box, you know, instead of grow tents, because grow tents weren't, I didn't really know about them back in like 2009, 2008, you know. I mean, they were probably out, but I just didn't, I didn't quite know about them yet. So I just, yeah, used a shipping box for like a refrigerator and then lined it with emergency blankets like at Walmart. I don't know if you ever seen those reflective mylar. So, lined it with that. Did some big old like 50 watt, curly Q CFLs. I did like 6 of those in there. Just little 1 gallon pots, nothing crazy. I tried, Miracle Grow to this, that, like just going through the first like 2, 3 years of growing. It was just like trying what I, you know, seen other people doing and having success with, and then seeing how I liked the smoke from it, I guess, in a sense. And so I did that for probably a year, year and a half, and then moved to like an actual closet, instead of just random kind of barbecue box. So then I had a 600 um coolant, in the tube, had the flanges coming off the side, ducting the air outside. And that was the other big thing, is growing in Arizona, man. It was so hot that um I was running, my lights at night. That definitely helped with trying to do HVAC. Um, and then there was also like tiered electricity use, so you would get charged more in the middle of the day versus at night. So I feel like one thing that I've been about, from the beginning, is like try to grow the best flower and product possible for the most affordable. And so I've always been, I guess, like a budget grower, but I do invest in quality equipment, and any money that I do make from like my seeds and stuff like that, I just reinvest it all, back into what I'm doing essentially. Um, and so yeah, I went from, a little box to a closet and like a little, I don't know, it was probably 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide, maybe 18 inches deep, just kind of a little veg chamber. And then I had a little cloning dome, and basically have my 2 little closets. My main flowering closet was like a typical 4 by 4, you know, and so I just have one 600 over that and vented that out, uh, outside. scrubbed it with charcoal filter, and then running it at night. Thankfully, I was running in the mid 80s, but it was they were all right. I didn't quite know about VPD back then, a little bit, but humidity wasn't quite on my mind as much as it is today, and to really help the plant regulate the nutrients as it needs to, instead of like I ran into a lot of potassium deficiencies growing in drier environments because, yeah, drying out the soil too quick, it just didn't allow it to uptake it as it needed. And the more I learned about VPD, I learned like that was the causation of a lot of issue I had early on. But, going through that, I kind of ended up, I dug cocoa, and general hydroponics. It produced quite well, but I kind of would feel and see over time like the flower, it all kind of general had like a general underlying taste and smell. It didn't, it was like it had terpenes, and it just wasn't like what I've had before in a sense. And that's, I guess, when I kind of discovered organics. Um, and so there was a transition in my growing period from when I came up into the medical scene of Arizona when that first started going up. I forgot what years that was. I don't know if that was like 2010, 2013, around then. But I had a person that I was essentially caregiving for. And then through the whole program, I ended up um, getting, I think I had 4 other people I was caregiving for at one point. And so I was doing that for a solid 2 years in Arizona. And then I moved once I graduated high school. I stuck around Arizona for another, I want to say like 2 years. I guess kind of backtrack in the meantime of all this. Um, I also had a, hey, let me get some water real quick.
No worries.
Yeah. In the midst of all me learning to grow and everything, I had a family member that knew somebody that they had been in Tent City, which is basically like there's a spot in Arizona, it's Tent City. It's like jail, but it's like overflow from jail. So my family member met someone else that was essentially going up to Humboldt. He'd bring back like 10, 15 pounds at a time, but he would get it untrimmed. And so he would basically, I told this family member, yo, I'm growing this, that, and the other. And then they kind of connected me to this person. And basically, he was bringing back, decent little bit of weight. And then he needed it trimmed up because he would get it for a way better deal on trim. So then I was like in the midst of all, learning all this stuff, I was also trimming up a lot of flower for this guy. And he was, I was getting paid in flour. I was getting to keep all the, bottom of the bag stuff. And that's when I got into learning how to make hash. And I did that a lot. Thinking about it now, I did the old kind of like blender style hash. Um, and, it's terrible to think about now, but yeah, I was just kind of learning and just a teenager back then when I was like trying all this different stuff and reading what I could on the internet. Um, didn't quite find out about bubble bags quite yet. And so, I basically make this like blender hash that I would screen it through a coffee filter, and then the trichomes would settle to the bottom, and then you sift off or you siphon off the water to basically where the heads were, and then you kind of like get that out and then dry that out. And that's what I was doing. But anyways, I make nice full melt these days after learning about many different people and their techniques, and I kind of went towards Frenchy cannolis route, so that's kind of how I make my bubble hash these days. But Yeah, so I got really good at trimming. And that helped out down the line, when I worked in the rec industry for a little bit. Um, and so yeah, between learning to grow, kind of taking care of a couple other, med patients through the Arizona med program, and then, trimming up for this guy, and like he would drop off, 3 pounds. I would trim it up. I'd keep a couple ounces, keep the bottom of the bag, and then be like, all right, let me bring over, what's ready to go. And so we had that good relationship for a couple of years, and then I moved to California and then talked to that family member, and he ended up getting caught in New York, taking pounds up to New York, and he was in jail last I heard. So it tends to do that to people, unfortunately. But so that was kind of like getting into it from like my teen years, from smoking to like, oh, I want to explore into how I could grow this. And, I was grew up really poor. So it's not like I was like, oh, I could just buy weed all the time and this, that, and the other. So I was really interested in like, how can I make this affordable for me so I'm not like spending money on it in a sense. Um, so yeah, that was kind of, I feel like 14, 13 to like 18, that, my years in Arizona. And then I feel like, yeah, I was about 18, yeah, 18 when I moved to California. And I moved to a very secluded place out in the middle of the desert in SoCal. I was born and raised Palmdale area, kind of grew up in Granada Hills in LA, um, in like Burbank and, San Fernando Valley-ish. I moved around a lot as a kid, a lot of back and forth between California and Arizona. So I grew up a lot in Phoenix, Arizona, and then just all over kind of SoCal. Um, and so when I moved out to California, I was about 18, and my dad ended up, for like, it was like my 18th birthday. He took me to go get my California Med card. And so I got my Cali Med card, and then kind of got into the whole Prop 215 um, program out there. And then, yeah, at kind of, started off small and then worked my way up to, I was in a 4-car garage. I had like a quarter of it for veg, and then like the other 3 quarters were flowering. And then I had a nice 10 by 12 raised bed outside that I would have, do that during like the summers and autumn and whatnot. And it was cool because like the weather where I was at was really nice, so I could run some hazes and stuff that went like I had one that went till like December 5th is when I finally cut it. It just kept going and kept going. So I really got to experiment with different genetics. I started going to um, different clubs and things. That was one thing my dad and I really kind of got into once a little backstory, I guess, is long time. I was probably 12, 10 around there. My dad got popped for growing like 11 plants or something. He used to have this dude that, grew really good OG Kush. And the backstory was that, he would go to quote unquote his apartment to sleep for the night, and his apartment was just straight OG. That's all he ever ran was, OG Kush. And so, he would go there at night, act like he's sleeping, but he's working on plants, go somewhere else. But he found one bud that had like some seeds in it, and he grew those and got popped with those. And he didn't have his card at the time, and so he ended up um, having to do some jail time for that. And so that happened when I was like 10 to 12 in that kind of age range. And so like my dad already, he was into weed and loved it too, but he ever since then he was like he didn't smoke again until like I moved out to California, and then he got me my med card, and then I got him to smoke, and then we would go to like shops and like test out a bunch of different flower. That was kind of like a thing we would do. It's like we would go down to LA or San Diego or Central California and just like hit 2, 3 shops, pick up clones, seeds if they had it, flower. Sometimes flower would have some bag seed. So I was able to just kind of like go through genetics, and then I was meeting people on Facebook. I met Tony, Filial Phil, Boneyard Seeds on Facebook early in my career. He was a big mentor in my growing experience and just learning process. And same with Mean Gene from Freeborn Selections. He was very big into let me test a lot of his stuff that he didn't have released yet, or maybe didn't feel like, you know, I was, I don't know. So between both of them and Levi West from Pistol Positive Genetics, he was also very prominent in one of being one of my mentors and teaching me, and kind of between those three gentlemen, they really helped cut down my learning curve into growing. Because I always tell people, everyone can grow weed, but growing cannabis to the highest potential is not easy. And so yeah, I feel like they definitely kind of help cut that learning curve, because I mean, uh, between all three of them, they've been growing since they were, teenagers. And for them to be, a bit older than me and to pass down knowledge so freely was just incredible. I was incredibly thankful to have them around during just like my learning process, I guess. And I feel like they kind of came into my life at that 19 to 20-ish age, mark. And so they, between talking to them and meeting them at cups and going to hang out, we all went to, I think it was 2014 and 2015 Emerald Cup. That was super awesome. We got an Airbnb, me, Tony, um, another buddy, Rain Man. We all went. Levi ended up, yeah, he was there too. So it was awesome, and then we did it again 2015. Um, and then we just unfortunately haven't since. But so yeah, I got to play with a lot of cool stuff, thanks to Tony and Mean Gene and just kind of people I've met, and then I just kind of perfected my techniques, I guess, in a sense, over time. And I ended up taking a wavelengths and optics class in college. I went to college for a little bit. And so it was really cool to like take biology class, like biology 111, and then just like be like, oh, so like if I'm breeding tomatoes, like blah blah blah, and basically get all my breeding questions answered from an actual reputable teacher, someone that has a degree in it. And in the midst of, before I went to that biology class, I read Robert Connell Clark's breeding Bible. That was super awesome. I read that thing probably 3 times now. That amazing book. Anybody that's thinking about playing with plants, you should absolutely read it, even if you're not thinking about playing with cannabis, just anything. Like it's a great, great teaching reference. So, yeah. So between going to college, kind of getting to ask some in-depth questions of teacher, my biology teacher at the time, and then I had also taken a wavelengths and optics class. So I really got to kind of dive into like that, and then learning about the Emerson effect on plants and how, learning about spectrum. And that's when my dad and I kind of came up, after doing a bunch of research in the class and this, that, and the other, we came up with, it was, I believe, a 11 bandwidth spectrum. We ended up having UVA and UVB, far reds, far blues. It was your typical purple, what you would, see now. But we basically came up with the spectrum and then a diode layout, um, and contacted a company through Alibaba and basically got them made. We had 6 tester panels made, and ended up running those, took some of the 1,000 waters down and then ran some of those. I ran one bed, one 4 by 12 bed with those 6 panels above it. And I wanted to do a seed to flower test. And so that's what we did and got absolutely incredible results. It was very, very impressive. And so we ran those for a while, and we were going to have some made or some more made and then try to, like sell them. And, other LED companies were coming onto the market and this, that, and the other. And after about 5 solid years of using them, we started having the diodes burn out on them. So we kind of decided, well, now that technology's kind of come up to speed a bit more on LEDs, um, probably look into getting them made again, but with different LEDs. Probably the Samsung diodes, because I want to say we had the Crees with a 90 and a 60 percent beam angle on the diodes, depending on if they were on the inside or outside of the panel, I guess, in a sense. And so, kind of got really into that and then fell out of that. And so I do want to get some made. I contacted Spider Farmer recently because I've ran a couple of their panels and I'm pretty impressed with their stuff on as of now. And so I kind of was like, hey, would you guys ever be willing to like work with me on doing like a custom spectrum? And it sounded like kind of no. So I'm still in the works of kind of figuring that out, or, but as I digress, ran, ran that garage for a while, taking flour around to whatever shops, want some decent flour and, taking, I had 12, like 12 patients that I was taking care of at the time as well. And just basically keeping it cost of production as low as possible so that way I can keep flour affordable. um that's, I guess, been one of my biggest things, is just try to grow the most potent, best flour for the most affordable price. But I got into, kind of playing with plants and breeding around, my 20, like 21, 20 age mark. And I, just typical little pollen chucker stuff here and there. Growing it, just kind of playing around. And then I forgot what male. I found some male that was just like incredibly terpy. He had extremely beautiful color. He had frost on him. I was like, whoa, I didn't even know males can like do this. And I want to say it was Blue Power now that I think about it. I think it was a Blue Power F2 male I'd come across, and that's what I made the F3s with long time ago. But yeah, then I was like, wow. And then I, grew some of those out, and I was like, whoa, if you get an incredible male and you put it to incredible females, like you just get some really incredible stuff, you know? Um, and so I just started playing with different gear. I was running some gear for Tony of Boneyard Genetics, and Mean Gene as well. And Sin City, I've always been a big fan of Sin City's gear. I tested for Sin City. I used to test for Gage Green a long time ago at one point. And so kind of, I think what really got me into it was I did that. I played a little bit with Blue Power because I ran 4 packs of Sin City's Blue Power, and I ended up finding, I think it was like 2 really good males I liked. One of them was absolutely killer. And then I had one female that was just like a blueberry muffin, like gas. And so I was like, all right, these 2 males to her, I think that'll be good for F3s. And so I did that and then kind of learned about like bottlenecking genetics and stuff of that nature. And then I was like, oh, Jackson, Mean Gene, he really kind of turned me on to like, hey, like, it's cool to work stuff, but it's also cool to like keep stuff open because you don't want to like work along just down to, something very weak and whatnot. And I feel like a lot of cultivars are working that way now. A lot of elite, you know, stuff. So, anyways, I want to say it was 2014. Black Lime Reserve, Aficionado is Leo and Jackson at the time. We're running Aficionado. And they had come out with Black Lime Reserve. And I like the genetics on it just intrigued me. It was Black Lime #1. There's Jackson has a whole write-up on what the lime side of it is, and then it's ChemDog Special Reserve. And so those they were a limited drop, 250 seeds. I asked Mean Gene to save me a pack and him to save me a pack for Tony, because he wanted some as well. And so he said he would. We went down to Emerald Cup. Tony had a booth that year, so I had to go wait in line and then pick up the packs for me and Tony. And so we got ours, and then Black Lime Reserve ended up placing second place that night out of like 800 entries or something. There was like 1,200, but like 400 of them didn't pass like pesticide testing or mold testing. So then it was like 800-ish entries, but still, it got second out of 800 entries ish. I'm just kind of generalizing. With, I think it only tested around like 18 to 20, mid 20s, but it was like 5% terpenes. So it was just insane terpene content. And so I was like, whoa, I need to pop these. And so I went home. I sat on them for a solid year or two. I sat on them for a minute because I was like, if I run these, I want to make more so I can, like look through bigger populations. Like I know I got my pack. I only had 9 seeds in it. There's supposed to be 10 in all of them. And I asked Jackson, and he was like, for real? And I was like, yeah. And he actually ended up blessing me with some more original F1s a while back. So that was super cool. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. And so I held on to those for a hot minute. Just kind of kept doing the Prop 215 thing in Cali until Colorado went legal. And I think Colorado went legal 2014, 2015-ish, around there, 2014, I want to say, because I ended up moving out here in 2015. Because I wanted, like, for some reason I thought, oh wow, it's legal now. Like, let's go do this legally, when honestly Prop 215 was like the golden era of like cannabis, I feel like, in California. And even from people I've talked to in Colorado, they say, yeah, the medical industry was like the green rush golden era. And unfortunately, it's from what we've seen just with big investors and whatnot, like the rec industry didn't like work out for some of the people that are truly passionate about it. And it there's a lot of people that it was the big time corporations that are kind of, some are taken over, but quality is still there, and their connoisseur quality is always going to be a part of the market, I feel like. And so um as we progress, um, I think we'll kind of get back to that craft quality, and it's already working its way. Everyone's getting tired of gelatos, this, that, and the other. Everyone's wanting sour diesel and OGs and this, that, and the other again. And so I've been working heavily with OGs lately. But digress again. So I will kind of rewind back to 2000. I was doing the whole med thing in Cali until about 2014, and I came and visited Steamboat Springs in Colorado. And I fell in love with it. I'm an avid fly fisherman and like archery hunter and just outdoorsman. I love being out in nature. So I fell in love with Colorado. And then just kind of having the idea of like, oh, I want to work in the legal industry. Like um I've just been working my way up, figuring out what I want to do, how I like to grow. uh oh, I love breeding, and then finding out, oh, like what kind of flavors do I like, and how do I get my hands on certain things, and who do I need to talk to about getting certain things so I can make certain things that I want to do. Or there's been many times I've picked up flower along the way with my dad and I, doing our little trips around Cali and hit dispos. I fell in love with certain OGs. There's a couple cultivars that's been hard to get, sour best shit ever. I'm running some S1s of it right now. Hopefully gonna get a cut of it here soon. Another one was OG head cheese. Nobody's been able to, you know, really heard of that one. That one kind of came out of the Tustin, San Diego-ish area. It seems like there was some grower down there that held that cut, and there was only one dispo that would always have it. And I tell you what, it tested at like 32-ish%, but being a heavy smoker at that time, it got you like high for the first time again kind of smoke. You're like, whoa, what is this? And so I've been looking for that one. I have not been able to find anybody that has that. Um, so yeah, I've moved out to Colorado to kind of get into the legal industry, and I did. Um, and it was, it was fun. It was definitely a learning curve. Kind of came in as a trimmer and worked my way to being in the veg, and then I was trying to get in as assistant manager, and I just couldn't quite get the pay that I was trying to get to help manage, 8,000 plants. And it just unfortunately didn't work out in the long run. And so I did that for, year and a half. Um, and it was fun, and, no harsh feelings to anyone. It just didn't quite, work out. Um, and so ended up just kind of growing on the side, and working a typical kind of 9 to 5 that, you know, there's certain niches up here that can make pretty, good money. And unfortunately, the cannabis industry was a bit saturated. And so that niche kind of fell off. So I had to, kind of take a different career path that, you know, was allowed me to live up here, because it's definitely not cheap to live up here. Um, and so, I did that and kind of started growing once I moved out here back in 2015. Um, got flowers going. I was, kind of slowly but surely have been collecting seeds since I was a teenager. Like I said, I've always For my 18th birthday, my cousin and I, um, we were trying to get a bunch of weed for my birthday because I was like, it's my 18th birthday. Like, let's make this fun. And so we spent like 3 days trying to get like a quarter pound of some Mexi swag. And it ended up being pretty good. It was like it had a fresh slice, razor slice in it, and it was just like a corner of like a brick. And yeah, so we ended up just rolling all types of stupid nonsense, all types of blunts and cross joints and tulip joints and this, just being teenagers and having fun. Um, and I ended up finding like 50-ish seeds out of that quarter pound, and I kept those. And I recently went through some of those and found something that looked like Girl Scout cookies actually. Smelled a little different, but surprisingly enough. And that seed stock, is from me 18, so I was probably 2000, I don't know, third 2012 maybe, I don't know. It's hard to like timeline everything. Um so yeah, just kind of been collecting seeds and going through seeds once I got to Colorado, and finally I came to a point like, oh, I'm gonna pop these black lime reserves. Like I got space that I can, make some F2s. I messaged Mean Gene. I was like, yo, like, I had gotten to actually smoke some of the flower because when I got some of the seeds, they're like, yeah, here, take some of this. They give me all types of flower samples. And I bought some of Frenchie's hash, and Levi bought some of Frenchie's hash. And so yeah, it was great. Smoked it up that night and it was amazing. And so once I had popped the black lime reserves, I was like, I these are something that I've loved. I got to smoke it, try it. It won Emerald Cup almost, 1 second place. And so when I did do that, I messaged Mean Gene and was like, yo man, like I really love this cultivar, and do you mind if I continue making it and this, that, and the other? Is like, no, dude, yeah, absolutely. Like, so I made F2s and I made some crosses with it, and um, kind of started running through those seeds, and I would get a lot of people kind of message me because I wasn't quite on Instagram quite yet. Or I was. I was. That was probably my first account now that I think about it. But I was mainly on Facebook. So posting stuff on Facebook, and a bunch of people would be like, yo man, like those are cool. Like you sell any of those or let any of them go? And I was like, no, not really, but I was like, let me ask Mean Gene, because I didn't quite feel comfortable about it. Because I was like, can I make some? And he was like, cool. And I was like, hey man, like I'm getting people like messaging, me for some, like, would you be cool if I, let some go? And he was like, no, dude, do your own thing. Like you bought the seeds, are yours. You do you. And I was just like, cool, like thanks. I've always been open with everybody, try to, if I want to work somebody's stuff, I message them, make sure it's cool with them, or want to do like a collab or this, that, and the other. And so I always just make sure, it's cool before I go and kind of really do what I'm wanting to do, with it. And so I did, and I ended up, kind of coming up with my seed company, Eclectic Elegance. My dad helped me. My dad and stepmom actually helped me come up with that. I was like, what are like words that, make you kind of think like connoisseur, like quality, like good weed, like good flower, exotic flower. But I didn't want, I wanted something different. And um I forgot who came up with eclectic, and then we added elegance in there and just kind of came up with it. And I was like, yeah, that's it. And then contacted someone on Fiverr. It's like a logo app kind of app that puts you in touch with somebody. And so I had somebody make me a logo, and then kind of, super fond of how aficionado package their gear. and they did the wax and the vial and the case, and and I didn't have like the funds to like replicate that, but like I found vials and I do my purple wax, um and I do like a two form of like sealed security, the wax on the vial, and then I got my mylar packs that are like heat sealed, you know um for a couple of reasons. Like, I like Tony's idea of going, biodegradable, this, that, and the other. Um, but I feel like due to the fact that I'm like more of like a slept on breeder, I feel like a lot of times my packs, they go in the vault, they go for storage for a couple of years probably before they get packed or popped. And so my packaging method is like, as long as you keep it in a cool, dark, environment, and even then it doesn't have to necessarily be dark because the packs are, enclosed and there's sunlight proof. But they're sealed, so moisture doesn't get in, they don't degrade over time. So if you do hold my pack for 5 years and you have it in a good environment that you're storing it in. Like, I just popped some more Black Lime Reserve F2s and had an absolute great germination rate on them. I did 198 of them popped. And that stock's getting to be a little bit older. And that's where I've like learned that, just from other people too, that like organically grown seed stock seems to just preserve better. Um, Definitely seems like it. I don't know. Just, I've had incredible reports with it. I've had very few negative reports. And I do test my gear. I have people that I send my stuff out to. Typically, a lot of times, I go to like previous customers. They tend to make pretty good testers. Like, I've given out my fair share of seeds and nobody, ever talked to me again, or get blocked or whatever. So typically, if you buy a pack of seeds from me, there's a darn good chance I'm going to come to you and be like, hey, man, I, got this going. You got some extra space. You want to run some, stuff for me? And so that's typically how I've kind of come to find testers and actually get people to actually get reports from. And so, I typically will wait 6, 8 months before I get some reports back, or, if I, run it myself. But I typically try to get at least 2 or 3 people, reports back, make sure nobody's getting Hermy issues. Um, I try to typically breed for easiness to grow, terpenes, um, not so much bag appeal, because I feel like, there's a lot of cultivars that don't have the bag appeal, but they have that smack you in your face terpenes. And it's just like, I want what smells and tastes great. And I've found a lot of other cultivars that smell great and then don't necessarily, it doesn't come through in the long term. And so one term that I feel like Jackson kind of coined, Mean Gene, is the terpene, like the sturdiness of it. Like, there's a lot of things that smell great growing, and then you put them in the jar and maybe they don't. It's not as great once it's kind of cured out, to where there's other stuff like my goat haze, or like garlic sherbet, or breath reserve, or the dome crusher OG. It's like, what you smell when you're growing is what you get when it's cured, and it tastes like what it smells like. And so I've just constantly been just, I select and breed for easiness to grow. Yeah, terpenes yield, but not everything is, a yielder. And so I'll generally put that on the pack. Like, I puts a little bit of information about each cultivar. And so, yield sometimes, like I'm working with LA Confidential. I have a 10-year-old cut that I got from a buddy in Michigan that got it from a guy in NorCal that he got, original pack of DNA LA Confidential from like the 2010, 2012, circa. And he found a killer cut that he's kept around for a decade. And, just through knowing the right people, I got that. And it's incredible because it's the same Lacon, as we used to call it back in LA when I would go get it in around 2013, 2012. It, that typical like sweet, cushy, like I don't know. It's an incredible smoke. I love it for nighttime. It yields really well. It has color, so not everything I make is, for yields, but uh I typically try to make it pretty sturdy, and there's some things that, I'm working heavy with a lot of OGs right now, and I feel like OGs are pretty known to harm with like light or too much newts. And so, like, I made my cognac OG line, and I haven't quite released that one yet because I did have one tester report some hermia issues, and so I want to run some myself, and I would prefer to have one other person that I feel real confident in, to like run them. So that's like a line that I recently made, super excited about, and then kind of was like, damn, a little let down because I was like, this dude got some hermia issues. I need to kind of dig through this before I feel comfortable letting it out to other people. And it's like, is it something that's very small to where it's like if I give you a disclaimer, hey, if you got some light leaks in your tent, this might chuck some nanners, or, should I just not release them at all? It's kind of like that ethic of like what, you know. So we'll see. But I have a pretty solid drop of some new gear. Um and then I have some stuff that's coming up. So recently I had like a menu made, and so people can DM me and I can kind of send you a menu and um, whatnot. But I have some new stuff coming up. I did big Black Lime Reserve F2 hunt to make F3s, and those females are finishing up right now. They're about 2.5 weeks out. And I went, like I said, I went through about 100 seeds. I was finding some variegatedness, whatever whatever that's called, that Chem Dog likes to do. Um, I found about 8 plants that kind of were throwing that a bit heavy, so I culled that out of the population. There was a couple males that were super stretchy, not really desirable, not as terpy as I want, so I culled them out. And so by the time I got down to it, I was down to 4 males and about 20 females. So about 24 plants out of 98. Um, and I'm doing this. I ended up switching to 3 foot by 3 foot by 1 foot raised beds in 6 foot by 3 foot hydro tables. So I basically have 2 of those and then 2 raised beds in those. And then I'm kind of like doing, I don't know if anyone's heard of Steve Cantwell at Green Life Productions, I believe it is. He's doing, the big raised beds with the pots cut out, the bottoms cut out and then put in the raised bed essentially. So I've kind of switched to that method, doing probiotic living organics. And so I got those seeds going right now, and that the males, when I was collecting pollen from those males, they would just stink up the room. It would just smell like the soury, like lime zest, like in like a lumber yard on a like fresh kind of foggy morning. It was incredible. And the females have just been pretty much a nice, consistent. Some are limier than others. Others are just straight like a sour, I don't know, just sour, kind of cushy smell. So I feel like between the males and the females, it's going to make incredible offspring that I'm really excited to see people run through some myself. Um, but I even had taken some pictures of some that were like, because I like to look for those outliers too, like, the recessive kind of traits, that you look through 100 plants and you find that one or two that you're like, whoa, what is that one? Um, and so I found one of those and I was like sending some pictures to Mean Gene. I was like, does this resemble anything that he's like, that's what I keep around for my lime selection. He's like that. So, um, yeah, I'm really excited because I feel like from reading about breeding, F2s kind of typically tend to be, not the greatest offspring to look through, but if you find good offspring to look through them, when you get to making F3s, F4s, and continuing to IBLs, you really find the good stuff from, what reading I've done. But yeah, just kind of been perfecting, cultivating and cloning. I've gone through so many different cloning methods: rock wool, oasis cubes, riot plugs, uh, arrow cloners. I've kind of gone back to arrow cloners recently, just because it's kind of like cost effective. It's relatively cheap. I'm not having to buy, plugs. Um, so I've been sticking to that lately. I feel like I've really kind of finally dialed in my curing. That was one thing that was very difficult in Arizona. And even where I was in California, like it was 5-10% relative humidity. So it was like you had to create microclimates to even try to get stuff to just not bone dry crisp out on you. And just get that hay kind of stuff. Or like I would have certain cultivars that would like I had a grape skunk, giant big old buds on it. And it's like you would think it's dry because the outside would be dry and it'd be crispy, and then you jar it up and the next day it's all super wet again, and then you dry it out again and then just fight that. And I had I've just I've constantly messed up over the decade. I don't know. I've been growing since I was 15, and now I'm turning 29 this year. So, going, and I've had my life on a plant cycle. There was a small hiatus of about 6 months, and then the few, month or two here and there between moving from Arizona to Colorado, or Arizona to Cali, then to Colorado. But like as soon as I'm like a little settled, I'm getting plants going again. So like I've constantly had my life on a plant cycle. It's really hard to take vacations. It's really hard to like go do stuff. You got to have somebody watch plants and this, that, and the other. So, yeah, it's just, I feel like it takes a certain breed of people to, have the dedication of some people that to this plant. It's just like Tony, Mean Gene, like they've worked with this plant day in day out for their entire lives, and that's just something that I've kind of tried to mimic, and it's I've loved every minute of it. There's definitely some aspects I've missed out on a little bit here and there, a couple of elk hunts or this, that, and the other, but it's worth it. It's what I love to do. I have nothing but love for this plant. I love how much of a community it brings together. Um, just between, my little friend group of people and just the people I meet on Instagram. Like, yeah, you find your typical haters, but I found some really solid dudes too, and females, like just general people. So yeah, I just think, as long as the community keeps educating themselves and we kind of get back to that craft cannabis. That's what I'm trying to do. I've just playing with gear that I personally love and smoke and have smoked on. And thankfully, I've made enough connections to be able to pretty much get any cut that I want to work for a project. And there's so many homies that are like, dude, I'd love to help you out. Like, and I'm like, dude, send me this. Like, I'll split the seeds 50-50. Like, totally just keeping everything transparent, showing them updates on the project, sending seeds, So I've worked with quite a few awesome breeders. And just phenomenal people, just from being like, yo, you have this, that looks awesome. I think that would go great with, this or that, the other. And like, now I've accumulated a, a small suitcase of seeds. I got 2-gallon mason jars of seeds I made. I have like 3 other gallon mason jars of seeds of other friends, seeds I've bought, seeds I've traded, just all types of seeds. So I have my big old seed bank, that I keep all sealed up in jars, and I have a ton of desiccant in it, and I keep it under the house. And I try to, anytime I pull stuff out of it, I try to maintain that environment, try to not get it having swings, because it's kind of it's bad for germinate or seeds, like long-term storage. And then, as big of a seed collection I have a pollen collection too. I'm constantly going through seeds and collecting certain cuts, and making stuff that I want to make, and then letting cuts go, and constantly cycling through stuff. So I do run into really incredible males that just impress me. I'm like, wow, maybe I'm not using you right now, but I want to keep you. And I feel like out of the seed stock I run, I probably throw away about 95% of the plants that I go through. It's only those very few top tier that I'm like, all right, you're sticking around, you know. So that's why I try to, I'm gonna breed towards what I like, but I also have friends that, they help me preserve certain stuff. Like Kevin Jodry, I got his ChemDog Special Reserve F3s through Tony. And he sent me a handful of them. I ran through them. I did an open pollination for F4s, and I forgot what happened. I think I was doing an auction or something, and Kevin commented. He's like, "Wow, this takes me down like a triple memory lane. Like, I remember those plants and this, that, and the other." And so I was like, I messaged him. I'm like, "Dude, let me get these in your hands. Like, send me a good address. They're consider them at your house. Like, just send me a good address." And so I sent him like 2 full vials, so probably 50, maybe 60 seeds to run. And I left him a note. I was like, make more. So it's just awesome to like work with really cool people like Kevin Jodry and Mean Gene and Tony and Fire on the Whole Genetics and Red Scare Seed Company. Oh man, I'm gonna just there's so many, everybody that I talk to on Instagram, you know who you are. There's a reason I mess with you guys and talk with you guys. Like, I feel like I only want to work with like-minded individuals, and I try to surround myself with those types of individuals, and I try to meet them anytime I can. It's like I feel like that's what these cool events are for, because then you're like, all right, who's going? Let's try to meet up. Let's try to burn one. So it's just awesome to be like a part of the community, and then just like help everyone out doing their own thing. It's like, just because I'm not specifically working a certain cultivar or genetic, maybe someone else is looking for something and I have seeds of that, I'm totally willing to like, yo, work these, look through them, make more, whatever you play around with, kick me some. That's all I ask. Like, I'm just, I'm here to, help the plant, improve the plant, um, and just meet really cool, like-minded people along the way, and see how people are doing different methods. And I feel like I've constantly tweaked my methods depending on, I've read through Jeff Lowenfeld's books, all three of his teaming with microbes, teaming with bacteria, teaming with nutrients. That kind of kicked me off towards really going the organic route. And then like going through different podcasts, learning from people like Steve Cantwell, how he's doing organics on a large scale that not most people can pull off, and just seeing, what works best for others. Like, look at the Jungle Boys. The Jungle Boys learned how to stack EC in these tiny cubes and make the plant grow just incredible, buds. And, not necessarily everyone agrees with salt grown flower, but it's like, look at where Ivan came up from and then to where he's done now. So it's just like seeing all these people that I look up to, like Scott from Rare Dankness. Huge shout out to him. He was a awesome breeder that I would see at the Cups, talk to at the Cups. And now I talk to him on a personal level and we generally talk about hunting. Like we don't even really talk about cannabis, so it's just I don't know. I love it. I love this community. I love this plant. I love breeding. I love finding incredible stuff like, the Lime Breath Reserve Lime Skunk cut that, is my breeder cut. Everyone that smells it's like, whoa, dude, what is this? Like, this is something that I I'm not seeing in the scene. Like, and so, I felt like one of my kind of goals being a breeder was like, all right, I need to try to make my like own kind of hype cut, and I feel like potentially this might be it. And it's my favorite smoke. And, I just got some flower to a coworker and he absolutely obsessed with it. He's like, dude, when are you growing more of this? I was like, I only got like a little bit for me left, but I'll let you know, So yeah, it's just cool how the plant can also just bring people together. So I don't know. That's just, yeah, that's kind of my story of how I got into it, you know, what my journey through life has been with it, and I guess kind of where I plan to go with it. I constantly am always running out of space. That's one of my biggest issues is, I get a new setup and it's bigger, and then a year later I'm like, man, I need more space. So I think that's where I'm at now is just constantly, I got two bedrooms. I got a bedroom and my flower room, and it allows me to, produce flower for myself and, look through a lot of good seed stock and make seed stock. And I have a pretty decent basis. I got about 18 different cultivars running up, you know, in my bedroom at right now. Like it's a little hectic in there, and that's one thing I love about organics is like it's a bit more forgiving, it with salts. Certain cultivars can be a little bit more picky to where I feel like organics, I just have I run a very simple kind of feeding. Just use kind of a good humic, a good soybean amino, organic, not, doesn't have any of the glyphosate or whatever, from being sprayed, just try to get good, fresh um, soybean amino. I also use organic nutritional yeast. Um, and then I have my own veg kind of amendment mix. That's, your typical kind of what you read for super soil. I've been trying to phase out animal byproducts. The only one I've kind of really stuck around to is like bat guano for phosphorus. And even then, I try to stick to like bat guanos that are like light and fluffy. Like there's a lot of them that have gotten like sandy over the years. And so I try to stick to out of everything, that's about the only byproduct, animal byproduct I use. And I try to stick to organic source, nice, fluffy. I have a certain brand, but I don't want to blow it up because I want to make sure I can buy it. you know. Um, but for anyone listening, that's what I look for. And so I just, yeah, I have my veg, my flower amendment mix. I have my own kind of little myco mix from two different companies that I've come to like out of trying countless people. And so I'll shout them out. Rootwise and OG BioWar. Both love both of their products. And then the only other thing I can think of is Garden of the Gods. They have a liquid calcium, and it's he does, I forgot the name of the company or the owner's name of the company, but he does a really good thorough job like sourcing quality organic products. So I don't use their whole line, but their liquid calcium is awesome for just kind of on the fly. And then I do use Facilitator by Aptus for that silica. I do want to try. There's one called like GrowGen or something of that nature. It's a monocylic acid. And then I've used PowerSci, and I feel like PowerSci and Facilitator are about the same. And the price point's about the same. I was using AgSil 16 for a while, but it wasn't quite as uptakeable, as monocylic acid. So I've just stuck with Facilitator since then. But yeah, I kind of just run mainly organics. I know that I don't know if Facilitator monocylic acid is technically organic. So I might be a little bit of like a hybrid organic, but mainly organic, probiotic living organic based. I do dregs, like bokashi dregs, where you basically take bokashi, put it in like a sock or a paint strainer. You put sugar in, a bit of sugar and some water, and then some lactobacillus. I don't know anyone that knows about like EM1 and all that. I make the rice wash and make like a lactobacillus, stabilize the M1 kind of thing. Um, and so I'll use that in my bokashi like dregs, and I'll use that to like feed or kind of break down a lot of like my top dressing for my veg mix and my flour mix. I'll feed that like after I top dress, so it really starts breaking down the nutrients a lot quicker. Um, I feel like honestly, it kicks it, within a week or two instead of it taking like a month of that kind of breaking down. And I use a pretty wide range of like what is bio available sooner and what's a little bit slower, so that way over time the plant can get like an even feeding on top of me feeding it a little bit, like doing compost extracts. I kind of got away from compost teas, and I just kind of do an extract with like a paint strainer. So I just get, really good compost. I have some I make, and then I like to mix Fuse Blend and the Olympia fish compost. Comes out of like Maine or something like that. And then a good earthworm casting. Um, and that's about all I use, and just kind of use as I need. And I mean, you could see on my Instagram, I got plants that they're in a 1 gallon grow bag, but I only use half the grow bag, so it's a half gallon of soil, and they're 3 foot plants, and they're nice and healthy, and so it's just how I've preferred to grow over time. And uh, yeah, I guess that's my story, and that's how I grow. And uh, I got my seed company. I do a lot of auctions as well, of gear that I've, come across, collab with, um, or just like uh, had, deals with buddies that had, some extra seed stock. I'm like, hey man, like, let me take that off your hands and let me, put together some packs with it and auction it and, kind of get your name out there and get some seeds out there, So I try to, just, I don't know, help other people if I can. And I don't know, I like meeting new people and seeing what people are doing. And yeah.
Um, Well, I definitely appreciate your passion, man. I've got a lot of respect for you so far. I agree with a lot of your story and a lot of your viewpoints. Uh, heck yeah. So, no, and that's for real. I mean, you you come preceded with a lot of compliments pre-show. You know what I mean? Even as the show has went on, a lot of nice things about you have been said. You
I
know,
appreciate that.
all valid points I can see just from our conversation, your viewpoint, your attitude, all respectable all the way across, and we haven't even really kind of dove into the genetics. And you know, I do this the way I do it because I like to see it, let it play out and roll out in your words, your passion, without being tripped up on my thoughts and questions. I like to try to let it roll through before I interrupt, and we can kind of go back. But so I guess we're gonna start kind of back from the beginning and kind of do like a cliff notes kind of question like thing.
Yeah.
So, you described your first experience there as being like, well, first effect experience. Why I asked you that in the beginning was a lot of times and occasionally some people like yourself throw a monkey wrench into my theory here is the people say they don't get high the first time. I actually kind of think there's like a barrier there, and if you're exposed around smoke cannabis or you get that second hand high at an earlier age, maybe perhaps it kind of wears down that barrier. So the first time you kind of really indulge, it's that at first instantaneous, oh man, I got high as shit, to where maybe if you weren't smoked around so much as a kid, but it was around, that barrier may be more intact. And so that first time it doesn't hit you as hard because it still has the full, you
Yeah.
know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but the first time that you said you really it did hit you, psychedelic experience. So, is that a good thing? You know what I mean? Is it a recreational thing? At some people like have different described that first.
So
Different.
I feel like, at first it was, kind of like that psychedelic. So like, I guess, all right, the first time when I smoked in like seventh grade, me and my buddy, like, we didn't have enough weed to actually probably be even getting high. So then like, it was like eighth grade when I had my friends that actually, we had a decent amount of weed. And the first time when I took those first two hits, like, I'm pretty sure like I got high, and if I would have smoked probably a little bit more, I would have definitely felt it. But then it was like I remember why I only took two hits because I didn't want to. My mom was like coming home like an hour or 2 hours like after I was getting home, so I was like I didn't want to be weird around my mom. I was like, here, let me just a little bit, but like I don't, So then when we all stayed at my buddy's house that night, nobody was there. So I was like, dude, let's just full blown, let's go. And that's when I was like, we smoked outside and it was just like, you feel like we were sitting on concrete. just around in the circle. And like I felt like I was kind of like floating. I just didn't even, it was just, you had this weird kind of just you're there, but it's just you never felt anything like that before. It's almost like it just really hit your endocannabinoid system for the first time, and you're just like, whoa, what is this? And then I feel like when I smoked that sour diesel, that was like my first time ever smoking dank. And to this day, I don't even, it was sold to me as sour D. I used to get a lot of weed in Arizona that, it came from NorCal, you know. Um, and so I had gotten some blueberry stuff. It was the most expensive eighth ever. It was $75 eighth. But dude, you'd break off an itty bitty bit and you'd just be gone. It was amazing. It's probably some of the best weed I can remember to this day. But that sour D, I probably got it within 6 months of me starting to smoke. Like before that, it was probably just, brick, swaggy Mexican stuff. And I would, do your typical scraping, resin, smoking resin when you're in a real bad pinch. And, yeah, the sour diesel, it was, from what I remember, it reminded me of the yellow juicy fruit gum is how it smelled. So to this day, I'm like, yeah, that's not sour diesel. It was just sold as a name, to some high school kids. So, but smoking it, we smoked it on the side of my friend's house. It was three or four of us, and we were sitting in rocks, like we were trying to, her parents. Yeah, it was her. It was like one, yeah, three of us, three or four of us. But it was, anyways, one of our friends, it was her parents were like inside. So we were like trying to be quiet, but we were like sitting in rocks in this corner of her yard, and we smoked it. And I just remember like instantly feeling like the rocks poking into my leg just went away. And like I just felt that weird sensation of like floating. And then we got up and like started walking to my buddy's house that lived down the street. And like we were in, somewhat of a suburb at that time. And like the sky above like the houses and like the trees and everything up, it was probably like 5, 6 in the afternoon. So it was like, evening kind of has the colors looking good, and it had like this like oily like rainbowy sheen over the sky, and I was just like, whoa, what the fuck? And that was like my super like first intense like wow. And I just remember going back to my buddy's house, and we just got super, I ate like a thing of ice cream and passed out with like pizza on my lap, and it was fun. So needless to say, when I come across cultivars that they make you like that again, you're like, wow, this is something special. And Lime Breath Reserve and a few other ones like have certain aspects to them. I'm like, wow, this is what I like. I have garlic sherbet. That one. If you just want to chill out and mellow out, and it just hits you like behind the eyes, that high that it just behind your eyes, and you're just like, oh man, that's the garlic sherbet. And she tastes amazing. It's from in-house genetics. Um, so yeah, I look for that stuff that it's just like, this is unique. It's unique flavor wise. I do run a lot of bubble hash, so I tend to see, hey, does this wash? Does it not wash? You know?
I
Yeah.
enjoy the ones that hit you behind the eyes. I always say, oh, that one made my fucking third eye blink.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, I love it. I just love it.
So you did California medical, make it medical. I mean, today with the recreational, I mean, either way, I respect anybody's journey with cannabis. So, I mean, is it still a medical thing? Is it a medical thing, or would you consider yourself a passionate recreational?
I don't. I will go
Is it
to the
fair
rec
to
dis
even ask? I guess.
No, yeah, I guess I would count myself as rec because I don't have my medical card anymore. I know you can, get better deals, this, that, and the other, but I feel like in Colorado, because on the med side, they don't need a test and this, that, and the other. So you might come across stuff that's sprayed and this, so I feel like unfortunately the med like golden days were over. Like, back in the day, you could grow what you could, take your extra around to dispensaries and see what people will give, for it. And that's what kept good growers alive, and then it's like I feel like rec now with licensing and this and that, it's like I don't have a facility because I don't have the funds, It's just like I I do what I gotta do and that's it. Um, and I'm constantly needing space. And, hopefully we come to a day. I'm hoping that I don't know if there's like a breeder tax stamp or something down the line that I can just pay, $200 a year and I can run through whatever plants I need to. I'm not some crazy giant criminal running thousands of acres trying to, I'm just doing my thing. I'm just running through plants, making seeds, and enjoying smoke and, doing my thing.
No harm in that. 100%.
Yeah.
100% with that. And I guess we'll probably flip back and forth. I don't know if how we are in time, but
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll get there. So
Yeah.
when you said you kind of checked out the commercial side of a lot of us do start out, for whatever reasons. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And then kind of dream of at one point doing it on a larger scale. But
Yep.
once and the dream, see, this is the with the catch 22 with the bugaboo. We never dream about doing it for somebody else.
Yeah.
And when you do it, it just seems like, and I haven't done it yet. That's why I'm asking, because myself, I've always kind of viewed it like, oh, I'm gonna end up hating it. The machine's gonna make me hate it at the end. Well, the one thing I'd love to do so much at the end, if I just head down that road and not do it for myself.
So here, I will tell you this. When I first got into the rec industry out here, yeah, growing for someone else or, doing things for someone else is, it's cool being in the industry, but you're like, I would do it a little different, or like, the grower was using all biobiz, and he's like he was doing great numbers with it, but it was producing similar flour, I felt like, to kind of salts, to where it's an all algae line, and so you end up getting a very similar underlying taste and underlying smell. And so yeah, the terpenes would vary a little bit, but it wasn't quite the difference in you know uh what I feel like living soil could do. He was just cocoa and then doing that. And he was getting great numbers. But he was doing nitrogen packed cans. So we would grow these giant chem dog freaking colas, the size of a smart water bottle or bigger, and then breaking them down to the very, very tip because they got to fit in a tiny little jar. So it's just like we're growing these tiny, big old buds to just break them down to nothing, and then there's just a bunch of aspects of it. I was like, man, Uh, yeah, and then just the curing, like they devoted so much to flower space when they should have devoted more space to a curing because they produced a lot of flower, but then overpacked it in giant gorilla grow tents, and then it would, kind of Mean Gene would call it like it ferments, it gets that kind of brown, the trikes start to go ambery, and it doesn't, you gotta kind of, there's a technique to keeping that green color, but also, keeping your terpenes and everything. And so it was just not the ideal curing situation. And then like there was a little bit of a bad deal between like the owner and the head grower, and then he was trying to bring me on as an assistant and didn't want to pay me enough to like be part of it at that level, that I was like, this, I can barely live, so it was just hard. And then I tried working at other spots, and other spots are like, well, if you work here you can't grow at home, so there's that. And it's like, I get it, because take not bring stuff home from the facility, because you bet your ass homeboy brought a couple times, he brought clones from Denver. They looked clean. He didn't quarantine them, and brought in two spotted spider mites and PM. And so, that ran rampant a little bit. And I was kind of like, dude, you don't do a weekly IPM, and like and I was just like, how is this? How are you this master grower, is what I like to call everybody. Everybody's learning. I feel like nobody's a master grower. You're maybe a lead cultivator, but if you if you call yourself a master grower, like, get out of here. You're wearing clown shoes. Like, come on now. Everyone's constantly learning. It, yeah, just get over yourself, So, um, yeah, it was just like, how are you running this facility, but you're not even doing like weekly IPMs? How are you not quarantining clones you're bringing in, and just certain things that I was like, how, so it made me not want to be a part of the industry. I was like, this, I don't want to do this, and then it's like, if I go do this for somewhere else, I only had probably 5 6 places local, that I could choose from, and everyone had their own rules and this, that, and the other. So yeah, I mean, when I worked there, anytime I went home, straight in the shower, clothes straight in the washing machine. Like, I could not trust not being in their environment and then not taking it home. So I constantly, that was one thing that was super big for me, was, IPM. Um, so I feel like working in the industry, I was like, I don't enjoy doing this for somebody else. And so it kind of took the fun out of it for me. And then that's when I was like, you know what? I just want to do what I want to do at home and kind of stick to that.
Right now. All right. So I don't want to go too deep into this aspect of it, but I can already see it. I've already played it around in my head a few times that I may.
Well, it's 12-ish, and I know it's later for you, so I won't I'll try to keep it sweet and short.
Um, so the medical side of things, I appreciate, the not wanting to go through it or what see the value in it. But there's like, it's one of my biggest pleas of activism lately. And as my plea to you is, for one, uh as somebody that respects, a good craft cannabis and the power of terpenes, which are a powerful medicine on themselves. And I think you kind of realize that not necessarily a high THC content necessarily means a quality cannabis. That means you kind of realize that the breeding up of THC is taking it further from the natural medicine of it.
Yep.
And what I'm starting to see very much, it's with legalization going from state to state. Medical has always been the heyday because so many people out there were willing to take that time to start cultivating the plant themselves and just explore cannabis in general, dive deeper and deeper and deeper. They're what's going to keep that cannabis that we both love alive, that
Right.
variety, that special stuff. um I think that medical cannabis has been buried by is being buried by recreational cannabis purposely by the people that are losing out, pharmaceutical companies that won't be able to push their medicine and stuff like that, alcohol, tobacco. um but when that comes, I believe that our rights to grow and cultivate this plant we love so much is going to be jerked out as soon as they can get their hands on it, so they can keep control of the profits that they were losing through the battle of medical cannabis. um it's a huge effect of why we do this. It didn't just open the door, it was opening eyes and saving lives when then medical cannabis was the subject at hand. um but that's how it could affect you, and again, without necessarily, again, is back to, and you're probably seeing this already, these larger corporations, larger grows, as they push us little guys up out of the way, they tighten it up and in-house a lot of stuff, only what's popular. So the varieties that will be worked with and pushed through as medicines won't be necessarily the medicines that affect us, and through the tropical ways. The cannabis that people like yourself produce with high terpene value and good cannabis is it's a spirit medicine, basically. Those things, when they hit your nose, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
telling you this is the one for you.
Yeah.
And props to people like yourself that are making amazing strains out there that are clicking and maybe having amazing medical value for people. It takes people like yourself to keep opening up doors, you know what I mean? Because cannabis is very individualized. And that's one
Yeah.
of the other beauties of it too.
Yeah. Like literally one of my buddies I'm working with right now, he's looking for purple Urkel because he has, I think it's his wife or his buddy's wife, like has a severe medical illness, and purple Urkel is just one that helps her incredibly well. And so
TTA's
I'm
Purple Urkel. That's what it was
this
from, right?
this I mean maybe I just know it as it's the OG NorCal cut purple Urkel that came from the triangle, like um yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's TGA's. It's old school NorCal purple art. So I'm getting that over to him, and a hybrid that I've played with. It's some meat breath mixed with purple Urkel, and I feel like that definitely meat breath has had a lot of medicinal effects. For me personally, it helps me a lot. So yeah, like as far as strain dependent stuff working way better for other people, terpenes working a lot better for certain people, certain ailments. And I feel like Tony of Filiophil, Boneyard Genetics, he's really big on all of this, having multiple people try different strains, see what works for him or them, and that's where it's at. I feel like, yeah, market kind of got skewed and kind of went to this candy gas dessert stuff for extremely high THC numbers. And I have a buddy that works in the testing industry. He was a lab tester in New York, and he told me exactly how they're fudging, the really high numbers. So he's like, it's part of it, unfortunately. But hopefully, enough people in it can kind of bring the industry back to the medicinal side of it. And I feel like that's also where I decided to cultivate organically over salts, is I've found that you get higher terpenes, you get more of a psychedelic effect, you get a longer medicinal effect, you get stronger medicinal effects. I feel like salt flower, kind of tops out around 3.5% terpenes. Maybe, people are doing hybrids of it and getting better, but my mentality behind like salts versus organics is like you only getting, your NPK elements or certain elements into the plant, to where organics you're getting all of the elements, all 80 whatever. Yeah, you don't want certain ones like arsenic and this, that, and the other. And thankfully for carbon, it can help kind of lock it into the soil and not allow the plant to uptake it. But with that, and I feel like the feeding of yeast, there's something with yeast. They played a heavy role in the beginning of life forms. So I feel like ever since I kind of have been feeding yeast to my plants in the mix, it's taken the potency. Like, I don't know what my numbers are. I've never really had my flower tested on numbers, but it's taken like the potency of the high and the terpenes like to that next level. I feel like kind of the yeast and gypsum, feeding it, proper amount of um why can't I think of it right now? It's not calcium sulfate. They've my buddy did a lot of research into how sulfides play into terpene production. So just learning all these little different aspects of it, and then actually putting it to use, and then being like, wow, comparing salt flour to organic flour, I was like, hands down, I know what I want. Everyone else, you can grow for weight, you can grow for whatever works for you best, but I'll do what works for me.
Well said. Well said. Um, and you talking about like a little bit about bottlenecking cannabis down. Are we doing it through selection like that? Or is it happening through the way we're breeding cannabis?
I don't think everyone's doing it, but when everyone is, or not everyone, but when certain people are just taking an elite, femming it and hitting other elites with it, and then you constantly kind of keep doing that same thing, like I don't foresee it working out too good long term, to where it's like when I'm selecting through populations, I'm trying to keep around as many of the best plants that can, kind of further tailor the plant to be a better plant. And that's also why I like to work on clone onlys, like to breed them in a way to you keep them at their mother's core, but you improve them. Like OGs are known to be real stringy and, not really be able to hold themselves up, and herm and this, that, and the other. And I'm trying to kind of get a better, sturdier frame and, get kind of attempt to kind of get some of that hermy, kind of genetic out of there. There's a lot of, kind of debate that you can even do that, you can't do that. I feel like you really don't know until you try. So we'll see.
I feel like a lot of them strains are worth keeping myself. It's just a learning curve. Uh, like you kind of point out, for me, it isn't necessarily. I see that weak trigger with light leaks, but sometimes it's more over again, kind of can it be could control if it's a light thing to where them lowers aren't just getting enough light or weird light versus like a light leak is
Yeah.
which I think is more common. But moreover, it's like a high nitrogen through mid flower that usually
There
that will trigger that.
there's all types of stressors, and that's where I feel like a huge benefit to having testers is like you can people whether maybe they don't have light leak, but maybe they had a really gnarly dry back, to where the plants were completely wilted and they stuck them in water and they miraculously came back. We've all seen that with these amazing plants. And so whether it was a extreme dry back or heavy overnutrition, uh not enough light. There's so many triggers that it's just like when it helps when somebody's testing stuff and they're like, yeah, well, this happened and that's what caused this. Well, you're like, okay, well, maybe light leak doesn't cause it to harm, but extreme drought drybacks do, or and so that's why I try to test and get my stuff tested and test my stuff before I feel comfortable releasing it to somebody.
100%. And again, I have had tested out a lot of those that I've thrown out that I was look back and go, it wasn't that bad. We can be so picky to where everything's got to click with the regimen versus individual attention.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's that cog's kind of tough, I guess. And organics does make that easier. And I think that's just because it isn't, it's kind of presented with a limited, it knows what it has and it's kind of budgeting it to where we're push, and we're overdoing it, oversaturating it. And they're like gluttony eating almost. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's where I've been, really dialing in. Like I'm gonna get some soil sensors here soon so that I can dial into my water feeding system. Like, people have shown time and time again, you keep I think it's like 37-40%, water content in your soil is really where you want to be chilling. So if you can kind of really maintain that, maintain your VPD, um, if you really enhance your CO2, you can really make the plants do some amazing stuff. For a long time, I wasn't a big proponent of, additional CO2. I just ran filtered outside air. And then I had one grower be like, well, think of it like this. So plants breathe CO2, we breathe oxygen. Imagine maybe, trying to run a race or a marathon through a straw, and then you know maybe kind of assimilating running a regular marathon with your mouth being like pumped up CO2 levels. And so I started to experiment with it, and I was definitely impressed with what I saw. Even with vegetative growth, it allows just the plant's metabolism to go into like overdrive. It's incredible. And thankfully, even with organics as well, um, at night, the soil off gases a lot of CO2. I know the stomata close at night, but you can produce CO2 at night. And I mean, depending on how much your room's circulating, you might take some out, but you're producing CO2 for the plants in the morning. I have a special little, kind of recipe. I don't use CO2 tanks. Um, there's a cool little thing. If you take dry yeast, you can go get cheap dry yeast, $2 packet, at the Walmart, and go get some cheap sugar, mix a tablespoon of dry yeast and like a cup of sugar and water, get it in like 120-degree water, shake it around. You have to like drill. I use like a Tropicana jug. Um, drill some holes in the top, put a piece of duct tape over it, poke holes in the duct tape, and then just I mix up a new batch like every 2 weeks, and that mix of sugar and yeast creates alcohol, and it creates CO2. And so I produce a bunch of CO2 naturally for super cheap over, cool little experiment kind of thing, you know, and it helps my plants. Like if I have a sick looking plant that's just not doing too hot because my soil can be a little much sometimes, I'm gonna get it tested here by Logan Labs because that you're really only kind of getting a guess in the dark where you're at, where you, if you get your soil tested, you know where you're at and what you need to put in. So I'll be doing that here soon. But um I lost my train of thought.
Uh,
Uh,
it's easy to do when you start getting into the soil, to be honest with you.
yeah.
100%. Testing and trying to keep track and renewing. Uh, it's a beautiful process. Once you kind of dive deep into there, it kind of it's a very humbling experience. You
Like I said, dude, I've constantly fucked up. I've learned and learned and learned and learned. And I feel like you can only read so much before you have to experience it and learn it.
oh, for sure, for sure. One thing I want to touch back to before I lose it is I smiled when you brought up the space blankets because I utilized that a long time ago myself. Super cheap, great. They're good for actually insulating it against heats and stuff like that. There's a nice barrier. They're very reflective and cheap, super cheap. You can get them on eBay for next to
Oh yeah.
nothing.
Oh
And
yeah.
for closet, I still suggest them for like closets and stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that. Easy clean when, especially if you're wipe down that stuff for $1.50, you could
Oh
redo
yeah.
the whole closet. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
good as new.
Yep.
So I love hearing people utilizing, the same kind of technology, if you will, that was available to us and still possibly using it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was, yeah, just learning from other people and then putting my own little thing together.
Um, so as far as like breeding goes, I was kind of hinting to is I think that I some of it is selection. I think definitely the breeding with the hype stuff is 100% going to kind of hurt that again that market. That's going to be where that legal market. Oh, breed with hype, and it's just gonna spin way out of control. But I think it's some of that is definitely kind of gonna weed the gene pool, but uh I think some of that 100% uh is just gonna be damn, I spaced off a little bit there. It will be because of that and because of people's selection there. Uh, Indoors, the breeding process, because actually, it's an unnatural environment. All the natural pressures that could be applied in the gene pool aren't necessarily being present or pushed, from other environmental pressures, fungal pressures, stuff like that. In the outdoor, all kind of as breeding gets pushed forth, are all being incorporated into that toolbox for the future. Where indoor breeding, now we're pheno selecting and we're selecting for an unnatural environment. And I think as that kind of breeding goes forth, now we're asking for trouble because now we've taken it out of its environment and we've kind of weakened it that way from unnatural pressures.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in that way, breeding and selecting that way will kind of weaken the process a little bit. But I'm a huge advocate anymore of people doing proper breeding, and again, I'm not knocking anybody's practices or anything. I'm talking about necessarily long-term breeding for keeping strains that we love,
Yeah.
because I think anymore that like the selections from, again, different places and stuff like that will help 100%. But when we get down to clone only, uh I think we lose the value. And of course, some clones can change from place to place. So why are we selecting, for that one for that worked in California, but might be wonky here in Michigan?
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, and I've also had a lot of good luck too, with it, like clones that I've gotten. Like I got a SFV clone, that's a 20 some odd year old cut, and it was weak and wasn't doing too hot, but throw it outside during the summertime, let it get that nice sunshine, it reinvigorates with life. And then you retake some clones off it, bring it back inside, make sure you quarantine it and it's clean. But that's a one good technique that I've seen it worked for many people. But I also definitely believe you are correct as well. Like taking it from outside to inside is gonna, you know, bring out some potential negative qualities, and that's one reason I love, Tony and Mean Gene's gear. Like Mean Gene mainly brings outdoors and Mendocino. Tony, he breeds some indoors and some outdoors, on his patio. There's a lot of times I will stick, my clones that I got outside and I'll hit them with some pollen outside. You cannot replicate the sun. You're always going to grow the best flower outside in the sun. Like we can try as much as we want to with LEDs and this and that and the other, but you ain't going to do the sun. So I mean, some of Jackson's flower that he has brought to the Emerald Cup that I've sampled has blown away 90% of the best indoor I've seen, and it's outdoor. So I truly believe that outdoor produces some of the best flower and some of the best heads for making hash and for pressing for rosin. So yeah.
great dude right there as well. I got a good chance to sit down and do one of these with him a while back, and it was very enlightening, 100%. I appreciate, these breeders as well. Very humble you are, my friend.
Dude,
You keep giving credit to, and then I'm not discrediting Tony or uh Mean Gene in any kind of way there. But chat's referred to your work all night long.
oh really? And Chad, I just discovered Chad through Future Cannabis Project, and I started following him, and I'm loving the stuff that he's doing. Like, and that's what I love most is like everybody is doing their own kind of thing. It's like just I'm on my own little thing, and I got a buddy that's working some stuff over in Maine, and we all have our stuff, and we're preserving the quality genetics is what I feel like, to where the big names are hitting elites to elites, making money on them, whatever, but at least there's still smaller dudes around like me, Chad. And then there's bigger guys, Mean Gene, Tony, like everybody's hopefully in a positive way preserving the plant in one way or another, through quality people is like I guess my biggest hope, and of the people I associate with and reference, like I you know I learned from my roots, and then I just give credit to I've learned from so much from so many different people, but I feel like those two gentlemen and Levi West have taught me a huge fundamental ground basis of my knowledge. So I just constantly have to give credit to those guys.
Music guys as well. That's another uh a story there. Tony. He's been on as well. I know we talk about the power of cannabis as being a medical, having a medical impact. I think his story, him himself, is a great example of how impactful the plant can be as a medicine, and not even just a medicine. I'm very much on the record as
Oh yeah.
saying that the cultivation side of things is very much equal to the medicine itself, if not
Yeah.
greater
It's
than.
like as recreational as fun as it is medicinal. It's just like it's got two great sides to it, you know?
I think it's a shame that we have to even kind of draw that line. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, look at what they're doing. Is there anything else, any other plant that not only is illegal, but it's in different phases and different molecules, different levels being outlawed. It's not just that it's outlawed a plant outlawed, they're actually micro outlawing parts
Yeah.
of it. It's just
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Yeah.
Oh man. So what are some of your favorite terpenes? What are you obviously kind of talked about the lime, but what is that dream flavor that you're trying to put together in your head? What is the end goal?
It's hard because I mean, like I said before, it's very everyone loves their own stuff. Like what I hear a lot of times is, a lot of people don't like that Jack Herrera or super high terpinolene, profile to where I like that. I like it. I'm a big citrus and OG head. I love Purple Urkel, Granddaddy Perp. Um, I'm not the biggest into like earthy OGs. I'm more of like the gassy pine sol funk. Um, I like earthy, woody, sandalwood, peppery. Nah, not quite for me. I definitely like, good hazes. I know some are peppery. I guess I like the more like terpinolene haze, heavy hazes maybe. Um, so I feel like, citrus, whatever purple Urkel is, I know that my buddy had the Lime Breath Reserve um, terpene tested, and I want to say it was high in either camphor or no, it was man, why can't I think of it? Um, yeah, I would have to look at the list. It starts with a C. Camphor. I don't know. I would have to look at the list. But it was high in one of them. I was like, I didn't know I like that. But it's more of like an acrid, skunky, musky basement. Um, but it's crazy because I mean the Lime Breath Reserve it's given super lime rind all the way to paint thinner to real skunkiness to it's and it also kind of depends on the cure too because like I just had like a small little private cup last weekend or I went to one and my buddy flew out for it and he had some of the Lime Breath that was like 3 weeks old and then I had some from last June. Like I've been redoing my flower room and everything, so it's been shut down for a minute. So I've had some old stuff, and it's crazy the difference in the nuances in the terpene profile from it being fresher, from it being almost a year old.
Oh, 100%. That's why I honestly I like my cannabis on the fresher end. I'm a cure till it's dry guy almost.
Well, that's when I'll put it. So what I do is get it to a point where I call it cured, and then I will put it in, not turkey bags, but the vacuum seal bags, and I'll, vacuum seal them up, and then I'll vacuum all of them into one big ass bag. So it's like double sealed, and I'll keep them in a deep freezer, and that helps it keep the freshness and the terpenes over time. And then it also helps just keep it, it doesn't get that brown discolored look as fast, you know. And then what I'll do is I'll open up the bag, pull out an ounce of head stash, or if my buddy wants some, I'll get a little for him or whatever, and then put it back, reseal it back, put it back in the freezer. But that seems to be the best way for like long-term storage of flour for me, at least. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
So, for me, I just like that the nuances myself. I like to be able to hit it and be able
yeah,
to, that's this or that. And I got this on the back end. And what I found on that cure, I call it the basically like the gym bag effect. So, and like you take your good clothes, your bad clothes, they stay in your gym bag for a week. They all stink like socks.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean? And I
yeah.
think that's what happens with cannabis over time. All those nuances
Kind
that
of
we
mellow out
taste
into like,
bind into one and then sew back into the fiber of the flower. And it's not necessary. Not only that's again back to the beauty of cannabis and like
yeah.
how it can take you down that road. That one strain can take you down that road versus,
It's
you
very
know,
nostalgic. Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just it's yeah, I like that walk in the park myself. Versus, and again, we're talking about a different cultivars and stuff like that. Why am I trying to when I'm like people, oh, you have to long term cure it. Why am I trying to turn it into something else again? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
you're trying to like push it down that road to where it's not quite good enough when it was good enough for it. I should have been good enough right off the bat. I don't
And
know.
see, that's why I was just like, because I've had stuff that I like really liked, and I would only smoke a little bit of it. And then by the time I got to like, I don't know why I do this. I have weird thing for big buds. So I will smoke a jar. I'll smoke, like, you have a gallon mason jar of buds. I will smoke that big ass bud last. I don't know why. I just wait for the big cola last. I don't know why I do that. I should probably smoke it first, honestly. Um, but yeah, for some reason done that a lot. And so I would come to find myself like being 3, 4 months down the line, and it's starting to kind of go brown, or I, didn't do this, that, and the other. Maybe I didn't dry it out quite enough. Like I said, I constantly learn from fucking up. um,
That's
and
awesome.
so yeah, just over time, I kind of was like, all right, this has been the best way to, preserve it long term, because there's a lot of times like I will do a crop of flower, and then the next 2 crops I'm doing seed or this, that, and the other, So it's like I instead of trying to like store it in a closet or this, that, and the other to where it you know it not goes bad, but it gets that what you were talking about, the nuances start to go away and this, that. Um yeah, just kind of freezing it and has helped with that. But I think one of the reasons that it does that is because I've come to learn that terpenes are actually solvents. Terpenes are actually solvents. And I've seen people have flower that like sweat off terpenes, and they'll have like a rim of terpenes in their jar. It's crazy. I don't see it all the time. But yeah, from an extractor buddy I knew, he was like, yeah, no, terpenes are actually solvents. I was like, what? I never knew that. And this dude like would go to, classes down in Denver, and he was a legit in the industry guy. I was like, huh, interesting. So crazy what you learn.
So what were the first ones that you started to when you decided to start? What all right, that is a good question right there.
Yeah.
So what took you from I'm gonna start, cultivating for XY reasons to I'm gonna start mixing things together and creating, kind of beating down your own path.
So I guess there was like a time when I started finding out that there was like seed banks and people had, strains, and they made it from this and they found males. And that's when I was like, what? People are like tailoring weed to what they want. I was like, and then I got into learning about breeding, and I was like, huh. And, reading as much as I could. That was one thing I was like, when I get obsessed with something, I'm obsessed with it. So it just like I read as much as I could, so it went from learning how to cultivate to how to breed. And it wasn't even just like breeding cannabis. I read many books that were just breeding normal plants. It's like you can always kind of cross-reference a lot of different things when it just comes to growing plants. Um, so then, yeah, I just was like, what? So then that's when I kind of fell in love with, oh, wow, I can pheno hunt through seeds and select through different, stuff, and then make things. And, based on kind of what genetic profiles I had and how many of a population I had and what I kind of kept in that population, I can get a general idea of what I might find in the offspring. And so it's just like, oh man, this and this would go really great together and should make insane terpene combinations. And, you know, um, yeah, it's just kind of like when you smoke this and you smoke that, and you're like, all right, I need to find a really good male of this, and that needs to go with that. And one of the big things that I feel like Mean Gene taught me was when you select F1 plants or P1 stock, if the plants are pretty identical in growing structure and different attributes of how they grow, you're going to get a pretty darn good base stable like stock in your F1 generation. And so that way you won't have crazy amounts of variation. Like if you were to cross a deep chunk to a haze or something, it's like you're going to get all types of weird variation in the spectrum, to where if you have very similar plants, they just have a little bit different bud growth or terpenes or this, that, and the other. And you get a pretty stable F1 generation, and you can stabilize a line pretty quick doing that way. But you also make incredible stuff by crossing deep chunk to haze. So it's just the fun of it.
Oh, there's definitely a lot of fun in the different flavors. So, has there been any that have stood out for you? Obviously, I've seen some favorites in Chaz, but what have been some of your favorite creations so far?
Um, Definitely this last lime breath reserve crop I did. I found some really heavy lime rind like phenos that were just super smack you in your face, limey. So I'm gonna definitely be working like my lime breath reserve line really heavy, doing back crosses. Um, I'm probably gonna do an S1 line, and release some S1s of my lime skunk pheno. Um, excuse me. I'm really excited about my Archangel OG. It's San Fernando Valley OG crossed to Archive Space on Fire, which is Wi-Fi 43. Hit to Face on Fire back across number 1. And I'm going to be popping those here soon. I the garlic sherbet. I'm going to be trying to mix the garlic sherbet into Lime Breath Reserve via STS and S1s. That, and then I'm also going to look for heavy yielding, like limey Lime Breath Reserve male that has nice amount of frost. That's probably going to be one of the next seed runs I do. But unfortunately, I just lost a cut of my goat haze, which was Ghost Train Haze from Scott at Rare Dankness, crossed to a Melange Gold, which was a South African strain that supposedly came from like one mountain ridge over from Malawi. So it's like a cousin of Malawi Gold. It was one of the ones that went like 16 weeks, 18 weeks. It went into like December. When I grew it in California. I need to plug my phone. My phone's dying. Um, and so I found an incredible pheno of that, and that was something I made. What else? It's kind of blank in my mind at the moment. What I got going? Um, I did just do. I have LA Confidential going right now. I'm going to be hitting LA Confidential to Lime Breath Reserve as well. I think that would make an incredible pain reliever in sleeper flower. And what else do I got going? I got a lot of seeds and just cuts. Cuts. Let me look at my cultivar list real quick. I'm trying to think of what I've kept of mine because I've ran through a lot. Oh, I just ran through a bunch of grape limeade F2s. Mean Gene let me play with grape limeade, and that was Purple Urkel hit to his cherry limeade. And so I just ran a nice crop of about 50 F2s of that. And wow, gas, lime, like the purple, just that. I don't know what purple weed. It just has that purple. if purple had a taste, I feel like Urkel has that. And that's one thing I just love about Urkel. And Granddaddy Purple. So that line, I just made F3s of the grape limeade, and I found 2 really, really nice males that I kept home from. And so I'm going to hit those back to 3 females that I kept from this Black Lime Reserve F2 pollination. I kept some clones that I had come across that I was like, wow, you're something special. So yeah, just between running through stuff of my gear, running through cuts, making stuff, popping other stuff. I ran through, I'm trying to think what else. I ran through a bunch of my King's reserves. I made that Cognac OG, which was my OG reserve, which is Ghost OG, the Oregon Kid cut. I got it from Kevin Jodry. I hit that to Black Lime Reserve. I hit King Louis 13 to Black Lime Reserve, and then took a really nice 2 really nice males to 3 really nice King's Reserve females, and made Cognac OG. And then, like I said, I had those tested. A little bit of Herm kind of came out on one guy, so I want to run through them. And yeah, just kind of collabing with people. I ran through a bunch of Meat Breath F2s, made some F3s. I found one really, really nice male that looked exactly like OG Kush Breath. So I'm getting OG Kush Breath back this spring. I'm gonna be hitting that male to it, to make some seed stock of, basically it's an OG Kush Breath back cross down the line, but not technically a back cross, but it's gonna grow just like OGKB. The male was really really awesome male from the Meat Breath F2s. My Line Breath Reserve is Meat Breath number 6. No, that was the male. Meat Breath number 5. Crossed to two really nice Black Line Reserve male F1s. And that's what made my Line Breath Reserve. And I've hunted through, like I said, I've hunted through a couple hundred of those. I've seen a lot of people with grow reports from them and their terpene profiles, and it's pretty consistent terpene profile. There's just slight nuances here and there, and I feel like that's going to be the cultivar that I'm like known to make and work with, because it's been something special for me, and it came from two really incredible, you know, growers and breeders. You know, Meat Breath came from Gromer. He was a really good grower out of Michigan, and then Black Lime Reserve was, you know, aficionado, which was Jackson and Leo at the time. So, yeah, I just tell everyone run through seeds. There's incredible stuff in seeds that people aren't messing with. Find that crazy stuff that nobody's working with and make that yours. I don't know, whether it be through my gear, someone else's gear, Chad's gear. Like, I don't know. Just find what you like. Have fun. Oh, hold on. I can't hear you. Oh, I can't hear you now. Okay.
There you go. Yeah, I wish more people would pop more seeds, to be honest with you. I honestly think it's going to be those long flowering strains, cultivars, that are going to bring back the craft market, the
Yeah.
connoisseur market 100%. All these years it went from, people being grateful to grow, and you know what I mean, then at some points it did kind of become a commodity, and people selected for flowering cycles, shorter flowering times and
High
stuff like that.
THC. Like now the market is so hell bent on, oh, I need 30% THC. Like, no, the quality flowers, like 20s, mid 20s with high terpene content. Like that's the medicine you want. You don't, shopping by numbers. I always shop by my nose. Like I know if it smelled great and looks great, it probably tastes great and the grower did a great job. But if I just shop by a number, is that number fake? Is it even, did somebody pay the lab to just fudge the number? It's just like shopping by numbers just so skewed, and it skewed the consumer market so much.
I think that I really do. I believe that because there's a lot of us that have grown cannabis for many different reasons over the years. And again, flowering time plays a part in a lot of people's gardens, especially if you're producing it for reasons other than yourself. So when a lot of us growers, or a lot of growers that go belly up or don't want to compete with the market anymore, which is a whole another crazy conversation right there. But I think they're not gonna, they may turn off the lights. They're not gonna turn off the lights completely. And I think at that point, when it's no longer, well, I've got to flip this room, X amount of time to keep the lights on and stuff. When it comes
Yeah.
back to them, I think it's gonna be some of that long-term flowering stuff, because it's gonna be top shelf pocket weed,
Mhm.
and flowering times night. And then at one point, after that market gets so bland, and we go out to these events and we break out. That's one of the reasons, by the way, I've always liked being a tester, is because you've always had something everybody else doesn't have. You always have something that aha, what's that? And that's what that long-term flower will. They'll be like, them guys will come out with their long flower and smoke it with all that reggae fucking, rec weed, and the people will go, "Oh my lord, what is that?" They'll be like, the people that were growers for, again, whatever reasons and different phases will be like, "Wait a minute, you'll pay how much for this?"
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then we'll grow a couple extra. We'll start
yeah.
taking it into the market just for.
And I mean, that's where some people don't understand. It's like, unfortunately, yes, some people want 300, 350 an ounce for hazes, but it's like that electricity for that extra month ain't free. I feel like that's where growing those longer term cultivars are definitely going to be more like, if you can dial in a greenhouse, get that free sunlight, and maybe you have to supplement with an LED panel or a CMH or something, but it's going to be way more affordable to grow, and you're going to grow it with free sunlight. So I feel like, honestly, the long term is to grow and dial in like greenhouses, and then breed outdoors for just the hardiness. That's definitely selecting for PM resistance is and bug resistance is extremely huge. And I feel like terpenes are definitely a potential to, be a deterrent for pests as well. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I like to make crosses outdoors. I got a little kind of raised bed thing. I throw a little couple clones in and you know do some stuff or try to reinvigorate a clone only, or so I try to work inside and out, but I'm mainly indoors at the moment. But yeah, those and that's why my goat haze, I was loving that. It was like a 14, 15 week. It got shortened up a little bit from the Ghost Train Haze, but not too much. But it was that electrified, like psychedelic, racy. It was good, and unfortunately lost it. And I only have a handful of seeds left, so hopefully I can find something out of it. Otherwise, Mean Gene has the rest of the seed stock that I made, so he better get on popping it.
So is that the trouble with the small batch? I guess is the possibility of, if it isn't kept and treasured by the few, that it could be lost forever.
Yeah, and I feel like that's why it's so important to make seeds of stuff that you like, because dude, you never know what'll happen. Like, it was like a year or two ago in Texas, they had that major freeze. There's a bunch of growers that didn't have power for a week, that lost all their plants, they froze up and whatever. And it's just like, to think of, oh man, to lose a certain plant that you love so much and not maybe have some seed stock of it to hopefully find something similar, or to get it in a trusted person's hands, that this is something that you and I have, and it stays that way. In case you lose it, in case I lose it, we can get it back to each other, but it's not gone forever. So I feel like preservation is extremely important when it comes to finding and really interesting things. Um, yeah, because it's like, I wish I would have made a lot more seeds than I did. I only made probably 30, 50 seeds, and I gave half of them to Mean Gene. And then I popped half of what I had. I found two, I got like 5 seeds to pop because they're old. I mean, I made those back in like 2013, 2012. So they're 10 years old. But I still got like 5 of them to germinate. And out of the 5, I like 2. And out of the 2, they were both female. So I only kept the one female. And Yeah. So now I have to pop the rest of what I have and hopefully find something. But yeah, preservation is important, super important for everybody, and that's why I think everybody has their own project, and it's cool that they're preserving special stuff in their own way.
So is dry pollen storage the best way to keep for preservation kind of purposes in case you may lose that male? It's tough to keep a good male.
It's tough to keep a good male, and then it's good to be able to. I've been able to preserve pollen pretty well over a long-term period. Like I had some pollen that I stored for 5 years, and I was still getting over for like 50% viability off making seeds, and the seeds were still quality looking seed. So, and I mean that's just drying. Make sure you properly drying it out and storing it in the freezer in a sealed environment with tons of desiccant. And then I package it up in little individual baggies so I can just pull out a baggie, make 300 to 500 seeds per baggie, So if I want to make 1,000 seeds, I pull out 3 baggies. If I want to make only a little bit of seeds, I pull out one. It helps. And I can make back crosses a lot easier that way instead of trying to keep a male around. I can run a whole male that's like 5 foot tall and get an ounce of pollen, and an ounce of pollen will make 3 4 million seeds. Like it makes a lot of seeds. um so yeah, but by preserving a lot of pollen, I mean I'll try to keep a male around, but a lot of times I just try to get a lot of pollen and then preserve it and try to individual package, like 300 500 seeds worth of pollen, and then that way I can select from there how much I want to make, and then I have 1 million to 3 million seeds I can potentially make with that pollen. So
I wanted to pass along something you may or may not want to try. You know, is a technique that, as you kind of pointed out earlier, we never really know where we'll pull up other sources that we can bring into cannabis. Uh, Cultivation of different plants and stuff. A lot of times applies to cannabis. And in this case, our friend Johnny Seed, who cheers, Johnny, hopefully you're listening and hope recovering well from your back surgery. Uh, at one point in his earlier, kind of grow career, if you will, sourcing as much info as we should. And I agree with you 1% wholeheartedly on the master thing. Calling ourselves a master at anything at cannabis, we all have room to learn. We should be learning something new or a lesson, some type every day,
yeah.
every evolving. But in his journey in keeping open minded, uh, he brought in a fruit tree cloning method,
Cool.
Sandtag. And so he's in the Nevada desert and
Mm-hmm.
in Las Vegas there, extreme heats.
Yep.
And he started utilizing the Sandtag with great results in that heat with the Sandtag. I mean, almost too easy daily updates to how quickly they were taking root and for next to nothing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
How much is sand and just pulling them out, knocking off the
Yep.
sand, even if doing that and
Yep.
just kind of replanting them, but almost 100% germ rate for pennies for long-term torm, during that heat process. And I thought maybe you might be able to maybe you might want to look into that for a
I
cloning method at some point.
I definitely will. That's very see, and I love all the different ways you can. I mean, I've tried grafting. I've had some success. I've had success with tomato plants. And it's cool, like, yeah, all the different ways you can do things. And I feel like learning, especially even from different fields, just how, maybe food crop production, or, like fruit trees, like he's doing, how you can implement something to where you can make your cost of production more affordable. Because in the long run, that's what I've seen be like the biggest issue for a lot of people, is like keeping the cost of production affordable so that you can at least make money to like continue running as a business. Because I've seen so many like of the big, legal rec spots. Like there was a giant one. I'm not going to say their name, but they went out of business in Denver. And it's just like, if you can't keep your product affordable to where you can stay open and stay in business, then like you're not doing it right. And that's where I just became so big on like, how do I produce the best quality product for the most affordable price? So I try to keep all my, composting in house, like none of my leaf matter, none of my stem, none of my root goes to waste. It all gets either chipped up, composted, like I use it some way, shape, or form, because plant matter, as it breaks down, it's more bioavailable than the nutrient was in its solid form. So the more you just keep breaking the same plant matter over down again and again and again, it's just more bioavailable. So yeah, I'm super big on like, not having to buy, like, everything I do buy, it lasts me a very long time because I use very little of it. So I feel like, being a smart, knowledgeable person about cultivating, you can really, take your flower to a next level and make it, not really cost as much as it really needs to. I mean, my main cost is electricity, and even my water cost is so small because I um have top cover, and I'm running beds, and my VPD is good. So I'm using very minimal water, so it's just like, to be able to learn from everyone else to keep, try to make your stuff high quality and cost of production down has like been my biggest thing, I guess, learning throughout the years.
I almost laughed aloud while we were talking earlier because I was thinking, man, I know there's something that I was wanting to ask him about, and I'm sitting here like chugging this kombucha, and I'm thinking, there's something I was gonna ask him about, and I look down at the bottle, and I'm like, oh yeah, probiotics. So when did that aha moment come into play, and how big of a moment? When I talk about organics being like a humbling experience, the microorganisms for me, when I cracked and had a wormhole open and kind of seen how probiotics and how that everything kind of is like us, it's all like a
Yeah.
shorter cycle than I realized.
Oh yeah. Um, well, it's funny that you say that because my dad and my stepmom actually have a kombucha business out here in Colorado, and they brew kombucha. And I mean, dude, they have giant scobies that are like 3 feet in diameter, like, and they're like this thick. So trust me, I get dried out. I get scobies from them. I dry it out. I blend it up into powder, and I compost it into my soil. I learned about bokashi and doing like dregs, or it's basically a ferment from, you ever heard of Grokashi and Alan from Grokashi? So I used to test for him way back in the day, 2013, 14-ish. And I used to test his product, and, he was doing different blends, this, that, and the other. And so I really learned about probiotics through him and testing through him and amending it into my soil, making brews with it. um, there's a lot of, everyone was all super sick on, getting all that hyphae growing on their soil and, got all into that, just getting straight clouds of soil on compost. And I feel like two of the biggest things that helped me into organics is brewing bokashis. Doesn't matter what brand. Some are better than others. I just source good bokashi, Um, and then also learning how to do the lactobacillus rice wash and making like an EM1 kind of thing. Because as everybody knows, oh, yogurt has probiotics and it's good to drink kefir because it has lactobacillus. It's good for your gut. And kombucha is good because it's got lactobacillus. So to me, lactobacillus is good for your gut to help break down nutrients and realign your gut and do all this beneficial stuff. So as much as I've heard people say that, oh, it really doesn't do much for your soil or breaking down nutrients, and from experimenting with it, I would have to strongly disagree with that. I feel like it helps speed up the breaking down of nutrients. And I love it for a foliar spray because it's very acidic. Um, you have to be careful. I've burned the fuck out of plants. Like, don't get me wrong. You have to be light and but it's so acidic that it helps with like getting rid of PM. I've gotten rid of PM before from a plant, so everyone that tells me that no, a plant, I know it's systemic, but you can't get rid of it. I've done it before. Um, so yeah, learning probiotics, it helped me learn to like use lactobacillus and ferments into like breaking down stuff for the rhizosphere. It was like helping the gut of the rhizosphere for the plant in a sense. And I feel like it broke down stuff and made it way more bioavailable to the plant a lot quicker than just trying to use like myco products and trichoderma and stuff like that. I felt like probiotics and ferments and doing the lactobacillus wash and then stabilizing it with the brown sugar, like using that every other feed or experimenting, that is really what took me to like, wow, I've pumped out flour that certain cultivars that would match hydro weight, but it's organic and it smells amazing. And it's just like, so that's when I was really like, wow, okay, you can pretty much do the same as hydro, but be better weed. It just kind of depends on the cultivar. Like, so that's when I was like, all right, I'm doing probiotic living organics. And then it came to like trying to simplify it, mitigate how many different amendments I have to buy so that I don't have to spend my money on 50 different products. I'm just buying the main things that I need and then, you know, um, keeping my compost in house. I do compost extracts like once a week, and that is incredible because you have so much biodiversity and microbes and nutrients. So yeah, it was a crazy path that I just kind of stumbled upon. I guess Alan Grokashi Allen, and I got to meet up with him and smoke with him, and I got to smoke some of his infamous cherry pie. So good, so good. So yeah,
You've definitely had a lot of great influences through your grow career. That's for sure. Bukasi ain't no joke, man. I've seen what that stuff can actually break down. It's scary. It's scary what a
dude,
little bokashi and some sugar can break down in like a little bit of like no time into the gelatinous, just nothing.
dude, it makes. I mean, you want to talk about getting your compost pile going? You make a Grokashi drag, and then you let it ferment for 36, 48 hours, and then you water with that. Oh boy, it gets it cooking.
What has been the most thing you've been impressed to see break down?
I see a lot of times avocado skins are hard. Tomatoes don't like to break down very well. Um, plant like even just cannabis stems don't like to break down very well unless it's like chipped up, and so like even just trying to break down whole stems that are uh, a foot long. Um, it yeah, it impressed me because I mean it would turn practically anything into black gold in like a month.
For me, it wasn't a food, it was my cocoa that it impressed me with. So I've been back and forth in different mediums my whole career, and I'm not knocking any one or the other. You know, people always like to ask because I've been on this like organic journey lately if that will be my chosen method in the future or will I step back into cocoa.
Well,
It depends.
there's so many people that I know that do salt organic hybrids and crush it with salt organic hybrids. Like Jonathan Covert in the Denver area. I think he does cocoa with some sort of salt, but he uses like root wise or Bigfoot mycorrhiza. He crushes it. I think honestly, like I said, whatever fits you, you know? And I feel like there's definitely organics can break down and microbes can live and break down salts to a point. When you get super heavy overloaded on salts, then you start killing off your colonies. But little bits here and there, once a week, a little bit. I'm always big on like small and often over heavy and less often. That way the plant can just take what it needs. And that's what's always worked best for me. So, I mean, dude, you try a little bit of some salts, a little bit of, maybe do. I had a buddy that did compost and earthworm casting extract in cocoa, killed it. He had blueberry buds the size of Gatorade bottles. I mean, DJ Short's blueberry, just giant. Cocoa and earthworm cat, and he did that like every 3 or 4 days. And then the last 11 days, he just fed water and he crushed it. So yeah, whatever fits you, man.
So
It,
I believe that's too. I'm on the fence on which way I go. It depends on the predicament. I've definitely seen, but that's a side journey. So
yeah,
I'm doing a side by side in some organics, and I'm still running my cocoa, which I love a nice chunky cocoa. I mean, chunky, like 3/4 pebbles, almost like hydrogen kind of
okay,
cocoa.
okay,
And again, force feeding, kind of manipulating the plant. Mad scientists always worked well for me.
yeah.
So Smiley, my buddy, Smiley's Gardens. Um,
I just started following him.
awesome dude, awesome guy. And he starts talking all the organics nightly, and it be kind of come a little like not quite a standoff, but I'll put together some earth boxes and we'll see how well you like them, okay, kind of thing. And he did. He put me together a couple earth boxes, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll run them against my cocoa. We'll see how it goes." And the drawbacks from wanting to get back to organics were excuse after excuse after excuse. It won't keep up. It won't do this. It's not going to fit my schedule right. My perpetual harvest, my rotation. I ain't going to be able to like start them in the big pots. Oh, potting is going to be a bitch. It was none of which was true. Okay. But so Brandon Russ sends me some of his bokashi. Okay. So as I'm throwing it around the earth boxes and using it, I'm like, I got a lot left over. He sent me some. So I like started playing a little mad scientist and my cocoa a little bit. Okay. And obviously I said that in the beginning. I'm not afraid to anyway. So I throw some of the bokashi and some of these pots of cocoa there. And usually I'd like reuse that cocoa a few runs, get it, actually when it got to more like fibrous and powdery, when like most people would buy it, that's when I was like kind of
Chucking it.
chucking it. Yeah. And so I've got a brand new run with this fresh cocoa. And usually I'd get 3, maybe 4 runs out of it before I'm deciding to chuck it. And I throw this bokashi in the top of it, and it literally destroyed that cocoa to like powder that one run.
Just
And
breaks
I
it
was
down.
like, wow. I don't know if I like the bokashi in my cocoa. Jeez, that just cost me like 3 runs, but it was a good.
Yeah, no, it is a crazy fast composter. I mean, I was completely blown away. And I mean, like, even if you just throw like a pretty general soil amendment on top of soil and mix in some bokashi on top of that, you'll get insane hyphae growth. It's crazy.
Definitely awesome stuff there.
And you'll have to experiment with doing dregs, like fermenting it in warm water in a warm environment with like sugar water or honey. And you do that, preferably a decent cane sugar. But yeah, you brew it in like 80, 85 degree temps for like 36 hours and then dilute it like 50-50. Yeah, insane. And I mean, I feel like that you can use it on a lot of stuff and make bokashi go a lot further instead of just like throwing it. So you'll have to try that sometime.
I'm definitely open minded, 100%, or try to be.
And I feel like doing that near like at the last 2 weeks, if you do either throw bokashi on or um I like to feed with like a mycorrhizal and then do a drag, a bokashi drag, because then I feel like it breaks down any of the last bit of nutrients in either the plant, the soils. So that way you just feed water those last 14 to 11 days and your smoke is good.
So we have a ton of things in common, and I try to respect my guests as much as possible. And I don't want to try to like overstay my welcome
No,
when I
you're good.
know today's like your second day off, and I don't want to like, yeah,
No,
good, good deals. So I guess from the probiotics there was it is a like a very symbiosis relationship of did so was diving into the soil like that aha moment for you too, where you kind of realized that cycle and decided to kind of cut things a little bit short. I mean, I honestly, after I kind of the further I got in there, and I've survived three girls, three girls that have went vegetarian on me. Okay.
okay.
At one point that I've always had one that I said, I don't know, I'm not eating meat anymore. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll cater to you. And da, da, da. So all the years of resisting a vegetarian lifestyle, it wasn't again until I dove into the soil mindset and wanted to understand how things that I was at that point going, we're doing it all wrong. I should probably be cutting out a lot of the meats. I could be getting it closer and better straight from the source from a plant diet a little
That
bit than I
that's why
could
I
be.
like elk hunting, man. I get natural meat out in the forest. I mean, I'm big on hunting and farming my own. Like, I'm gonna try to farm my own food this year, but yeah, I mean, if you want to think about organics versus like salt grown just food, organics, you're gonna get those 80 something elements in the food to where conventional NPK farming, you're just getting nitrogen, potassium, it grows, but the nutrient density isn't there, and it's the nutrient density that you're striving for in food. And I feel like it's the nutrient density in cannabis that allows it to produce the best psychoactive resin and the best quality terpenes. This is truly what I guess have kind of fundamentally tell myself.
So is that the same with like wild meats there? Is it more nutriently dense than
I mean, elk, they have a pretty wide variety of food diet. I do work with local cattle farmers. I help them brand cattle in the springtime, and we'll get some meat that's, grass fed, no antibiotics, this, that, and the other. And I mean, it tastes different. It tastes way different than the meat you buy at Walmart. That's, just corn fed with GMO soy. Um, it's definitely more lean. It cooks quicker. I don't know. Once you start eating it though, you, I don't know, you acquire a taste for it. Um, so that's where I became big into hunting as I tried elk and it was amazing. And then I've just been, yeah, big into it and big into, getting organic foods and trying to, you know, grow organic foods. Like when I introduced my probiotic living organics into like the food space, I was growing like Swiss chard leaves the size of my chest. Like they were huge. Like one leaf would make a salad. Like I was growing giant broccoli. I was growing the most sweet um strawberries. And when I would also feed my strawberries molasses, and it made them the most delicious strawberries I've ever tasted in my entire life. So just seeing the difference between conventional farming that you buy at the store versus what you can grow and doing it probiotic living organics, you're just like, wow, I can just tell with my taste buds, let alone the nutrient density behind it. It's like, okay, I'm eating, yeah, I mean, if you want to think about it, a jug of salt, it's water and salt versus all these elements that get broken down and put into the plant and then get put into your body. And that's what your body turns into, everything else. So that's just how I kind of like put things together and how my brain was like, huh, this is why I want to do it this way.
has there been any other revelations you've had through your journey with cannabis that's kind of applied the other way?
Um, Applied the other meat way as
Like
in,
we talked about we can take other techniques from growing cannabis. Is there anything you've kind of learned in your cannabis journey, cultivation journey, even life lessons, lessons in the garden that have turned to life lessons, uh applied back the other way, I guess.
I mean, always have an IPM process, integrated pest management, whether you have pests or not. If you start growing a plant, you better have an IPM program. I've learned that many, many routes I've had. I that powdery mildew, russet mites, root aphids, which root aphids are actually just Chinese, or it's the rice aphid. And then the root aphids, they're so good at being alive that they genetically mutate. Some of them turn into winged aphids, and those winged aphids, going, biodegradable. This, that. Um, they. But I feel like you get
Accidentally unpaused my YouTube window there somehow. Sorry about that.
you good. And then those aphids went up to the plant matter, would shit out more aphids, and those would turn into what everyone thinks is like hemp aphids and cannabis aphids, which it all was actually the rice root aphid. And it's just crazy at surviving. That was the most difficult one to ever get rid of. Spider mites, russet mites. So doing an integrated pest management program has definitely been something that I've learned the hard time and time again. I guess was some aspect of it that I've taken from the other side, I guess, maybe from a salt grower's point of view and try to use it in my organics would be is how the Jungle Boys grow and how they stack EC into cubes and how they have cubes going into a main, rockwool strip. So I'm feel like I'm trying to do something similar to that, as in like how Steve Cantwell does with these raised beds and doing still my grow bags, but cutting off the bottoms and doing that in the living soil, and then basically trying to stack my EC from the top by amending and doing compost extracts. And so I'm trying to, stack that EC in there so that way I can pump out delicious, big, growing that plant to its fullest potential. So I feel like trying to kind of that and learning VPD and learning, how to really stick to that. And that was super big to be able to grow organics in small pots. For the last 3 years, I was growing in 3-gallon grow bags. And I was getting a general between 3 to 5 ounces of plant in a 3-gallon grow bag. So not, not bad. It really was strain dependent. But now that I'm doing these raised beds and this other method, I'm really hoping that I can kind of push that. So we'll see.
I've always kind of looked at the stacking, or in my I use to coin it the term up potting technique. Um, is I viewed it as a different way because I kind of envision as I'm stacking and those roots as I water away and that soil crumbles and those roots are exposed and harden off. I almost envision those hardened off roots becoming their own almost plant that's contributing to a whole. So they each one of those hardened off roots have their own like root zone. You know what I mean? Taking off
Mm-hmm.
into a hardier zone and then relating back up into the whole.
And I don't know if you've ever, like you grown a plant and then kind of like cut it and then looked at its roots, and you'll see that like, oh, this side of the plant grew stronger because maybe it's closer to the light. The roots on that same side correlate to that plant doing better. Like I've seen it time and time again. Out of the countless times I've cut open root balls from my growing. And I mean, I recycle my soil, and what I love about re-amending it is I let the root balls break down or I let the root system break down for like 2 weeks in the grow bag before, I actually break it down. And all the broken down roots have produced a really nice, like, core. Like, it's almost like a cocoa core feeling to the soil. And I'm on my like 7th cycle. No, and it's it's been working well. And then now I'm kind of transitioning to this raised bed style, but I'm still recycling my soil from my veg plants because I only veg in 1 gallon grow bags and 3 gallon grow bags and solo cups.
I always used and again, I hate to argue and I've been back and forth on that with my good friend Smiley. Sometimes I love Smiley just because he will take it with a smile and entertain all my back and forth. What ifs, what ifs, what
Dude,
ifs.
I always play devil's advocate. Like, no matter what the side, I always play the other side. Like, yeah.
So in that process of like, should we be reusing the soil and all that? I've uh I've been at one point a big fan of, and again, that take a lot of heat for this, the pump and dumps, just buying soil. And it's where we learn, it's where I learned, and that eliminate problems in the future.
I,
And then
I
the same kind of can still be said. But in that process, I do what you're exactly talking about there. When I go out there in the yard and I flip over that pot and I'm literally stomping that ball into nothingness, basically. One was the biggest revelation I found out was there's terps in the soil, which was I I
the
could
roots.
smell, yeah, I could smell which one it was without even looking at the tag as I was stomping it out. But I always judged my performance of that cultivar not by what happened up top, but it was what was in that soil. If I had maxed out that root zone, what I had given it, if it were most cases a 10-gallon pot, if that root zone wasn't as healthy and as thick as, almost to the point of wrap around and maxing it out, my job up top wasn't, you know,
It's all
done.
about the rhizosphere. Yeah. No
Uh,
matter what you do, whether it's salts, organics, the rhizos, you don't have a good rhizosphere, you're not gonna ever do anything great up top. Yeah.
I always seen more potential. If that thing wasn't, as full as I thought, I was like, oh, no, I didn't even. I'm not taking it as far as I should be. There's work to be done here. If I'm doing it correctly, this pot should be full. Then my bountifuls up top will be maximized out. To be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny that you say that because I just remembered what I forgot earlier is my little CO2 bombs that I do. Anytime I have a plant that's kind of looking sick or not doing quite as what I want it, I put it right by that CO2 thing, dude. Within a week, it total 180. It's crazy what CO2 will do for a plant's metabolism, and you'll have weaker plants that don't do that great. And dude, you put them closer to a light or in the middle of the room, and you give them some CO2, you'll take a sick, weaker looking plant and turn it around. I've been impressed.
Now, again, not knocking the power of CO2, but is that something that should be implemented when you've kind of maxed out your light, or you're trying to utilize your light to the fullest? Should you then kind of worry about CO2? Is it one of them things, if you're not necessarily subpar light, should you kind of be already introducing CO2?
So, I mean, it's really the biggest thing is if you're running a sealed room versus like an open, system. Um, I had a really big grower buddy that, he was super big on when he enriched, and also when he would feed, and then enrich like an hour after he would feed the plants because that would really kick their metabolism into gear. But with my little CO2 bombs, they just are constantly making CO2 for, a week at a time, and I'll need to make a new batch. But every 12 hours, I just go in there, shake it up, and it's just frothing up, making a gang of CO2. But I know, the plant stomata only opens up in the daytime. So you're only really going to want to enrich during, the daytime. Um, that first hour, I mean, honestly, if you're smart, you have, you know, you, I gradually bring my lights on since I have multiple lights. It saves on my electricity bill. And when the plants first wake up, they're not, boom, ready to go. Like they're waking up. So, um, a lot of people I've talked to really enrich like the middle of the day, when they're booming most, they're metabolizing the most. And, they'll hit them with just high doses, let that circulate through the room. And then once it comes back down, hit them with another shot. So maybe they'll hit them with 3 shots throughout the day up to like 1400 ppm and let them do their thing. But I know it's just really good to hit them with CO2 after um, they've fed, um, because it just kicks their metabolism into overdrive.
I always get, and I asked because I'm a good analogy in chat there of CO2 kind of being like a nitrous, unless you've got the proper motor to apply the nitrous to, it's kind of useless, isn't it?
Hmm. So it's all about, and that's where indoor growing, you're playing God, you're making your rhizosphere as best as you can. You trying to get your VPD as best as you can. You're trying to get your uh, soil moisture. You don't want to overwater. You don't want to underwater. It just trying to get everything dialed perfect and trying to, yeah, it just, you're trying to, get it all to be as best as you can get it so you can produce the best flower. Because otherwise, if you're lacking in one area, you're not going to be able to produce the best flower and you're not going to be able to utilize what you got going. So, yeah, it's definitely a true statement.
So, as a breeder, uh, how is it difficult as a breeder slash hash enthusiast slash maker? Um, is it tough? Is it a tough choice for the, like we've talked about, to chase that THC number up for hash purposes, or is it not even a factor? Good hash is
I've
good even in
like,
small amounts, the better.
yeah, like I said, I've never had my stuff tested. I've constantly been told my weed's amazing and better than most other stuff they've smoked. So I can go based off that. But as far as numbers, I couldn't tell you what my stuff necessarily tests at. I think the biggest thing with hash maker cultivars is, does the resin wash? I've heard so many times Jackson and people that works with Mean Gene's cherry limeades and work with certain cultivars that really greasy ones that the resin heads don't stay intact and they just grease out, and you'll see the terpenes on the water and the water smells great, but you have no hash there. To where there's other cultivars that produce like a sandy, like granular head, and those wash really well because they're stable and they can be washed. To where a lot of other ones that are like greasy and this that they don't, that's why you don't see them as rosin or hash, just because they don't, it just, you don't end up with like a product. It's I've seen ones that are more like greasy and don't wash well, they do great extracting, and they make incredible live resins and stuff because those terpenes you can extract them with, a heavy solvent, but like trying to do an ice water extraction is difficult. And I don't know why, but it bugs me when people call bubble hash solventless. Solvent is the universe's, or water is the universe's solvent, like main, just universal solvent. So to me, to call water hash solventless hash is, I'm like, it's literally doing the same thing. It's just not degrading the THC down like BHO does. So I don't know why, but that's like one of my biggest pet peeves is when someone calls water hash solventless. Is I'm like, water is a solvent, so that's not necessarily the most true statement. But anyways,
Kind of more of a carrier during the process because it's not
yeah,
necessarily tearing them off, it's just
no,
carrying them from A to B.
no, but it does degrade the greasier ones, like I'm talking about, to where they don't yield as hash makers, and that's why you can't make them as hash makers. So, is that the water doing it? Is that the ice busting them up? I don't know, but yeah, yeah,
See, there's a conundrum there too, because
yep,
for me, um, there are definitely some bad cultivars that don't wash well. Uh, there's a lot of the purple strains, and I feel like a lot is happening there. Uh, Tropicana cookies don't wash well. There's a lot that don't wash well, but for me, that's the stickiness. When I pull up a bag and everything's sticking together, I know my final product there. I can stop at a full malt hash. Okay.
mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily, you wouldn't even think about taking it to rosin because I know this process will stop here. I can actually drop that in the skillet and it'll just boom, it's going to be gone. To
And
where
I
the
mean,
sandier stuff will have to be processed a little bit further to take it to that point.
and what's funny is, and it's not necessarily funny, but the creator of the Puffco Pro was just talking about how, a lot of hash makers, when they're trying to burn, really sandy or textured ones that have thicker cuticles and lipids, they have uh, heavier, outer layers, that the Puffco Pro burns it longer at a lower temp and mixes it around so that way it melts those without burning all those lipids, and you can get all the nice THC inside as it like moves around. Um, but it's burning those heavy like cuticles and lipids around the heads that like gives that kind of like burnt popcorn kind of flavor. If you ever overburned kind of hash, you're like, you know. And so yeah, I know what you're talking about because yeah, I know those runs where you pull it up and it just totally cakes up and sticks to the bottom of your bag, and then you got to clean your bag for the next run. I've had those really really especially like nice nug runs. Um, yeah, yeah. And I mean, you're only that first run, you're doing 5 minutes maybe, and then you're pulling that bag and that's your top A quality bomb stuff. If that, I've heard people only do 3 minute, first wash, and that's just your bomb of the best. So
Uh, that's kind
it
of debatable too. I don't. There we go. Because
we could
that
go
to
all
me,
night, brother. We could go
well,
all
the
night.
quality of the resin, I feel like is gonna be their fifth
Yeah.
wash in too. sometimes, like, especially when you're washing flour, that you may not have that like break to where all the buds have opened up and it's kind of released everything until a little bit later into your wash. It doesn't necessarily.
And see, I break down my stuff to a pretty kind of general consistent size. Like I'm not washing whole colas, I try to keep things pretty consistent because I agree, that is true. And that's why every wash, you best believe I'm pulling out buds, hitting them with the fucking jeweler's loop, seeing, do I got heads? Am I only left with stalks? How many washes do I have left out of this? Can I get 5 runs? Can I get 3 runs? No.
It's definitely a learning process. I love the hash making process. It's never what you think it's gonna be.
Nope.
Some days it can be a quick wash, which that never happens.
Dude, I'm always 4 hours in and I'm like, dude, my back is killing me. I'm ready to be done. Like, yeah, no, I've been there.
That's usually the time she just broke loose too. You thought, oh man, I'm not gonna pull another one. And then for some reason you wash it. And you're like, wow, all right, I'm not quitting now. Jeez.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So who have been some of your you kind of mentioned Frenchie. That's kind of like that's a go-to, I think, for everybody. Has he
Everybody.
been your biggest influence as far as that?
Yeah, just as far as like putting out, very accessible knowledge, I feel like a lot of hash makers like to keep their secrets. And I've definitely learned different techniques, the whole parchment paper over a DVD case or like a paint roller and cleaning up dry sift with that, or cleaning up dry sift with electronic toothbrush that vibrates, that helps get it through the dry sift screens. Just over time learning from certain people, but I feel like Frenchie and forgot her name. It's
Amelia?
Leo's sister. Mia. Yeah, Mia. She's great, great knowledge. And then there's just the new cats that are trying all types of different stuff. Then there's rosin pressing and freeze drying your product after you pull it, and then pressing that and getting incredible colors that are so blonde and still getting immaculate terpene profiles. So it's crazy, all these different techniques, but yeah, I feel once again we just learn from each other is the biggest thing, and you put together all the different things you learn, and maybe you find something out that not everyone else knows. It Yeah.
That's one thing as of late I've kind of because you're right, and people kind of take some of their practices proprietary.
And I
Yeah,
don't blame them. I mean, sometimes that's their living. That's how they make their money. So I don't, you know.
I get it too, and I get it. I get it. I get it. I was guilty of that working through the trades my whole life. And even as I look back, I think, wow, should I have been? Because that was always, what you knew set you apart from everybody else. You can charge more, how to the tricks and tips and be able to get the job done. It was always added to your value. And it wasn't later in life that I kind of realized, if I would have passed out some of that knowledge and kind of went with more of an open source type atmosphere, um, maybe I would have went more further ahead a little bit quicker. Yeah, you get kind of set in your ways too, and you kind of
Yeah.
need that outside perspective sometimes to go, great system, but if you just,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
so But that I've seen that, the cannabis community has been that, exactly. At one point, it was all keep all your tips and everything vested, and then it
Yep.
opened up, and now it's kind of the grow community is still somewhat open source, but like as we kind of talked about, like the hash communities and some of the finer aspects of it once was a little bit more open source with the knowledge, but it seems like some of that top tier knowledge is like being pulled back. I even seen one, I'm not gonna call anybody out. I've seen one hash maker kind of say talking for a group of cash makers that they were willing to share with each other, but they weren't going to open
Uh,
source it anymore because there wasn't the coming back of knowledge. They were
yeah.
dishing it out, but nobody was kind of contributing to
Yeah.
the open source. I went, I can kind of see that too. But
But that's the hard part of it too, because it's like I feel like in the grow industry it's so cutthroat and greedy that if you can find a good crew and work with a good crew and you have a good thing going, like keep it going. Like yeah, I don't yeah, I feel like just because you have your own little tricks and stuff, yeah, you can kind of drop hints or whatever, but it as long as you're a genuine, authentic person about, and you're kind of pretty transparent with what you're doing. It's not like, oh, I'm just not going to tell you absolutely. It's just, yeah, there's these couple little nuances that I'm not necessarily going to let you know, but this is generally what we're doing. But it's hard because it's a very cutthroat industry and it can be a very awesome industry. So it has very wide spectrums for sure.
so let me ask you about this as far as we dipped on proprietary. I backed off of this earlier because I knew you were kind of a small batch breeder, and I didn't want you to think I was taking shots on your grow
No,
method a little bit.
no.
But I'm really hoping that because uh cannabis is a craft and you guys are pretty much artists. So I believe that kind of releasing some of the gear in different phases and letting people kind of pheno hunt is like, I don't know, like not necessarily letting people make their own burger or whatever. Never any burger's the same. You know what I
So
mean? You can't call
yeah,
yourself McDonald's if every Big Mac's different, I guess. You know what
and
I mean? At some
here
point you want to go, this is the creation, I
and here
think.
all right, and here's how I've put it because I've thought about this concept a lot to myself. And how I think of it is Jackson provides the colors. He provides my colors I need. And I just use them to make my picture, my Bob Ross, and that ending picture was only able to be done via Jackson's genetics and me playing, or not just Jackson, but Mean Gene, Toad, everybody, Rare Dankness, just like they provide the tools for me to paint this beautiful picture. And my end product in this beautiful picture is like creating something like Lime Breath Reserve, is how I like to assimilate it, I guess.
Even at that, it brings a good point. See, what I've kind of have asked or put out the idea is for um all proprietary breeding, basically. So whatever you're putting forth is, you know what I mean, that thing you're standing by. So everybody's not necessarily talking about the ingredients. You called it a tool. Okay, in that case, you know, in my world, my tool, like say a hammer. I love my stiletto. You know what I mean? It's gonna make my job or my creation a lot easier. But I chose that stiletto because the fucking company put forth, everything, and every hammer is been standards, and you know what I mean. There's a certain when you pick that hammer up, there's a certain, you know what I mean.
And see, and I feel, yeah, I feel like lime, my lime breath reserve lime skunk cut, that's gonna be like a staple in my genetic lines and in my garden that you will see. And it's like, oh, eclectic elegance, yeah, he has all this lime breath reserve gear, or he has this lime skunk, you know, like that's gonna be my stiletto hammer in a sense, I guess, you know?
Right on, right on.
And it's like, people can hunt Lime Breath Reserve seeds, but good luck finding this cut I have. Like, you're gonna find a lot of awesome stuff, but I can tell you what, this thing's something special. And there's stuff I make that I'm never gonna release to the public that I make and just play for myself, you know? Like I did grape limeade to black lime reserve. I there's like two people that I've gifted it to, and I said, hey, have fun with it, grow it and whatever, but don't ever let this go to anybody else. Like, so yeah, there's certain stuff I make that is only for me. It's not for necessarily that stuff I want to release. So I guess that's more of like proprietary stuff. Maybe I'll make a cross with it, but it won't ever be like releasing seeds of it or cuts of it. Maybe I'll gift you flower if we meet up sometime, but there's definitely stuff that I'm just gonna keep for me.
The small batch necessarily equate
To what?
to elite genetics. Basically, I think a lot of people, when they think of like elite, they do think of like small batch or limited.
I mean, I feel like you can think of elite in two different ways. I feel like you can think of clone only elite, says, and most people, oh, I only work with elite cuts, like, this, that, and the other, to where I feel like there's a difference between pollen chuckers and breeders. Like, there's pollen chuckers that a lot of them popped up during COVID that just, oh, I can make fucking seeds with this random male and a bunch of females, and then you know, just try to, sell them for the cheapest price possible to flip a quick buck. And then there's people that really select through gear, breed the gear, get the gear tested, spend the time, spend the money, actually do the ethical thing, not just trying to flip and make a quick buck. I feel like that is the difference between maybe a small craft elite breeder or just an elite breeder versus what you would call a pollen checker, is somebody that puts in the time and effort versus somebody that's just trying to make a quick buck off some seeds. And I mean, you'll see those people, they have a new cross every 3 months. You know, you see me doing a release every few years. There's a huge difference. Like, so,
And that's what again, that's the quality that I'm hoping for with the proprietary times proprietary there
yeah,
is that kind of, quality in the end instead of rushing things through to kind of just put, oh, hype times hype on a pack. Here's the next one in 3 months. I'm hoping that proprietary times proprietary will slow that down. So whatever is being put forth is that, oh, this is it. You know what
yeah.
I mean? And I
And
think that's where the why, clone onlys are clone onlys for a couple of reasons. Sometimes they were a beautiful accident. And they just that's the only way they're gonna survive. And
Exactly.
sometimes clone only times are only clone only because the breeder has found something special, and that's the representation that they want to put forth. And that's
Yep.
kind of what I want to see with the seed game is,
Yep.
every seed you pop is going to be that clone only, that Big
Yep.
Mac, that
Yep.
Pepsi, you know what I mean?
Yep. And that's where I'm really gonna try to work, this land breath reserve and to the back cross and this, that, the other, so that way I can be like, all right, you want this line? Pop these and you're gonna find damn near the exact same female that I have as a clone. I'm not gonna give you my clone, but you can run these seeds and you're gonna find something damn similar, if not identical. And I mean that's where, STS and S1s have their purpose and so it's I'm not necessarily like I don't hate femmes. I'm not the biggest femme, I don't love them, but I do plan to work with them. I work with mostly regs. But
It's
they
okay.
they
We talk a lot of shit about autos here.
I just ran my last batch of auto seeds and I will never run auto flowerings again. Ever. So I've tried 3 different times and I'm done. I'm done. I've tried reputable people and I'm done. So yeah.
So yeah, I'm not gonna hate
Yeah,
at
we're
nobody
good.
that
Yeah, we're
doesn't
good
like
there.
films.
It's
So
already it's already like almost it's already late for you. So I know you're getting tired. We can always dude, I'm always down to do more episodes too. Come.
I hope
So
so. I
yeah,
definitely enjoyed the conversation, and I love uh, when great people are willing to hang out. It's been
that,
a
I love talking to like-minded individuals. So yeah.
right on. Well, I guess this is a good time to go over the ending of the show there. Uh, so basically, there's a couple aspects of the show. One, obviously, you've done tonight. That Zoom link that I sent you tonight, this is kind of make you laugh. Is uh, it's always the same one.
Really?
So yeah, the Zoom link that I sent you tonight is always good. And
Okay.
this is how I know it. This is how I do the Zoom link wasn't fucked up because basically that is your ticket into what I call the weed nerd world, and it's set up like this on purpose because so once you've done your dues as the one-on-one here, uh that Zoom link is always good for basically what I call the weed nerd world is like a panel-ish type episode. So that's what you'll find the weed nerd world on. And
Okay.
basically the weed nerd world has been set up to kind of fill out short nights. As we've talked about, you never know. I've left that time slot pretty well open, but sometimes they don't go to full term, and
Yeah.
sometimes they are shorter episodes, and that's when the weed nerd world kind of kicks in. So
Yeah.
on nights where I have short episodes, I'll kind of finish out the evening with a weed nerd world. So basically anytime of day, evening, they're kind of random.
Okay.
There's weed nerd world in the title. It's an open
Okay.
invitation to
Okay.
and it's
Just
only
pop
open
on.
to past guests. Yes, so you
Okay.
have to be a past guest up to tonight. That combination of guests could be anywhere of a variation of 700. So like 700 times whoever feels.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get or what we may be talking about, but you're 100% welcome to come hang out anytime you'd like.
I
I
appreciate
myself
that.
has had a great time talking with you, and I'm sure lots of people
Same.
that
Same.
watch tonight would love a chance to pick your brain and have a conversation with you on a much larger scale. So
Yeah.
hopefully
And I
you'll
mean,
keep that in mind.
everyone's willing to hit me up on Instagram. Like I said, follow my main Instagram, not my Elegance Eclectic one that I can't get into. Follow the eclec.tick.elegance. It's the one with the most followers. Follow that account. So anybody, feel free to message me on there. I'd absolutely love to come back on anytime you want me, and I will definitely take you up on popping on. Anytime you got that weed nerd going on. I did get the passcode. I found your passcode, so I won't have that issue anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
With that being said, I would love to do another one-on-one and have a second crack of some of the great stuff that I've missed this evening. And there's a
Yeah.
lot
I
there.
mean, we'll
I've
go in depth.
but if
Uh,
we talk about book being us being don't judge a book by the cover, you're quite a there's a lot of volumes we have not even scratched this evening, I can
oh,
tell.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm off Wednesday, Thursday, so that would be either one would be the best for me. So,
Right on. The final thing I'd like to get from you is a silly little thing I call the sound bite. The sound bite at some point will be a commercial for your episode. It's kind of like the old school radio identification thing. My
okay.
version thereof would be, hey, this is Eagle, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 794. You can say whatever you want before, after, or whatever, as long as that's in the body somewhere. I would be more than grateful. This is the only part of the show that I do record just for like commercial sakes. It took me hundreds of episodes before somebody finally, and again, it was my good friend Smiley, why don't you just cut this part out instead of going back through hundreds of episodes and just looking for that sound bite? And I was like, ooh, that's too smart.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, my friend, I am ready right now.
Hi, this is Eclectic Elegance. I just want to say I'm just trying to provide the best connoisseur quality seeds you can get.
Right on. And I hope a lot of people have checked in, went and followed that page. A lot of these great mods have been putting your link to your Instagram. Is that the best way to source some of your genetics? Is the Instagram?
You can get them directly through me. I'm branching out to other, kind of seed banks. I've gotten rejected by some just because I'm smaller. I'm on Heritage Seed Bank, and on Future Cannabis Project, he has Dogga.love Seed Bank. So you can get my genetics through both of those seed vendors, or directly through me through Instagram. And then I'm working with another guy very shortly. So that'll be my third. So yeah.
So with that being said, it's sad that some breeders are seed banks won't give the guys, some of the little guys, a chance. When it boils down to, that's kind of a hype times hype when some of this fire's coming out of some of the people that give the shit the most, which is some of the smaller breeding operations. So don't be
Eh,
afraid to give somebody like this gentleman a chance. There's been lots of testimonies both in the Instagram post and throughout chat of how fire the gear is. So
I appreciate that. And I need to get some packs to Chad. So I'm gonna get with him and get some of my gear in his hands so he can have some fun.
right on, right on.
And you
Yeah.
too. I need to get your address. I'll get you some gear as well. So
I think I may have something for you. I didn't. Chad said by Chad Westport, and Chad said, by the way, for the purple oracle, you could probably source the ranch and the dog gardens there. But I think I don't. I'm not wanting to overextend, but I think I might have something for you as well.
okay.
Uh, so
I am working with the ranch. He's getting me OGKB back this spring. So I'm already in the works with him.
right on, right
Yeah,
on. That's what a great community is for, right there.
exactly. So,
With that
all
being
right.
said, I do hope to speak with you sometime again real
Oh, yeah,
soon. Thank you very much for your time and patience and being able to get this one through. It was a little
absolutely.
bit of back and forth, but 100% worth it, my friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My pleasure.
With that being said, thank you guys very much for tuning out and hanging in. There has been quite a few through this
Yep.
evening. At one point, I looked down and there was at least 94 at one point hanging out watching us tonight.
Hell yeah.
So, thank you guys very much for tuning in. And most importantly, do not forget to do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness really do save lives. With that being said, one last thank you again, my friend, for doing me a small bit of random acts of kindness and giving me another opportunity to do this show another night.
Absolutely.
Thank you, my
Absolutely.
friend. Have an amazing day.
You too, brother.